Yeah, let's not have a discussion about this stuff. So. Okay, Ms. Maragoni, are you ready? Yep. Okay. All right. It's 6 p.m., so we'd like to call to order our Riverdale City Council meeting for Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. Please let the record show that all members of the City Council are present, as well as members of the city staff and members of the public. We've asked Mr. Mike Eggett to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I've asked Councilor Hanson if she would lead us in an invocation.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this opportunity to meet together and to conduct the business of the city. We're grateful for our country and for this wonderful community that we live in. And please help us during this meeting that we all may maintain a spirit of camaraderie and that we may be open and listen and contribute in a positive manner, that we may accomplish those things that need to be taken care of on behalf of our residents. We are grateful for all the many blessings that we have, and we ask you to watch over our first responders and all of our employees to keep them safe. And we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Eggett and Councilor Hanson. All right. We'll now move on to public comment. This is an opportunity to address the City Council regarding your concerns or ideas. No action will be taken during the public comment. Please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And if you do come to the mic, please state your name and your city of residence.
My name is Veldon Wardle, and I live in Riverdale in the River Glen subdivision. And comments are just regarding the rezoning of the property located at 3450 South Parker Drive. We've lived in our house for 14 years and have never had any kind of issue or problem with water or swampy area, anything in our backyard. Right now, the way that our house is, there's about, at the end of our property, it slopes down about 6 inches. Then there's about a 6-foot kind of roadway almost behind our property on this property in question. And then it goes up about 4 feet. If a subdivision is built there, obviously that little roadway thing is going to be gone, and that slope is going to come right up to my property. And I will have problems with water. I mean, so I'm sure the studies they got say it's safe to build houses there. That's not my concern. Having a neighborhood behind me is not a concern. I mean, again, I understand progress, and I don't have a problem with there being development behind. But what I am concerned with is how it's going to affect my property, because their study of engineers isn't going to. I mean, I know my house isn't going to flood. That's not a concern. That's not going to be caused by that. But my property will get water on it, and it will be soggy and swampy in our backyard where that property slopes down and meets mine. That will be significantly lower than this area. And no study is going to say that that's a problem. But like I said, I want on the public record, I've lived there for 14 years and have never had a problem. The little roadway behind my house does get swampy in the spring. It does get swampy when there is heavy rains. And I've avoided that just because, like I said, right now my property is about 6 or 8 inches higher than that little roadway. So it doesn't, when it flows down, it stays there. It doesn't come up. But that's going to be gone with this development. So again, I'm not opposed to the development. I'm okay with it being there. But just like I said last time, there was illegal fill that was brought in. That needs to be removed before the development happens. Once that happens, go for it. Good. I'll support it. I'll welcome neighbors. I'll be over there with a plate of cookies for people, whatever. I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with studies that do not care if my backyard is mucky and muddy, because I mean that's not going to come up in any engineer study or anything that they say to you today. But it will happen in my property, because I see it right there 2 feet behind my property in the area where it lands. So I just ask you to consider that. And I know, Councillor Hanson, one of the questions you had last time was you didn't feel it was fair for someone who bought property to be shackled with something the previous owner. Well, my understanding is they haven't purchased the property yet. There might be an agreement to purchase it, but they haven't purchased it yet. It's still in still in Mr. Purin's name. And so if they purchase it, they're purchasing it knowing that there was illegal fill brought in, and that should be removed before any development happens. I think that's the appropriate thing to do, and that's the appropriate message to send. You know, if we say here's the law, the ordinance, but we're going to ignore it because we want them to do what they want with their property, that's not a very good message that we send to people. So anyway, those are my concerns that I hope you will seriously consider as when this moves forward. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Donahue, and I live next door to Mr. Wardle, and I have the same concerns. But as you all know, that property is zoned for agriculture. If it's going to be developed, the person that owns it now should have to take care of that fill that's in there. We shouldn't be rezoning it for commercial or residential or whatever property until he's made to take care or correct the mistake that he did. I'm not opposed to development. I know we need more houses for people because we're all having families and everybody's growing, but I think before anything's done, it needs to be the fill needs to be taken out, and then when the city does their developmental plan for whatever they're developing their city for, they can rezone it then. Thank you.
My name's Lori Fleming, and I've got a Bible here I'm going to read. I already told Steve, and Steve said, please don't. Anyway, being a resident realtor and a former planning commission, I've watched Riverdale develop over the last 15 years. I've watched developments happen. I've watched you guys approve developments, and I've never seen you guys make these guys jump through hoops like you have these guys. I think the developers agreed to meet your demands. He's gone out and done a survey. He's gone out and done a water thing. He's agreed to move the fill, and you still continue to say no to him. You say that it's going to bring down the value of your property. For 26 years that I've been in real estate, whenever there's a development, it never brings down the value of anybody's property. You've got rodents running over there. You've got weeds. You've got all kinds of things over in that area, and this is going to beautify that area. Who would have ever thought that we would have $1 million houses out in West Kaysville, West Layton, out by where the mosquitoes will carry small children away, but we have $1 million houses there. You have a developer that's come into Riverdale that's willing to do whatever you guys want him to do, and you still continue to say no to him. I don't know if this is a personal issue or what it is, but right now Riverdale is in a lack of affordable housing, moderate housing, and housings for our residents to stay here. Taxes have been raised. People are going to have to move out because some of them aren't going to be able to afford it. We only have, right now, currently in Riverdale, we only have 11 homes on the market. 3 are mobile homes ranging in price from $49,000 to $135,000. One home around the $300,000 price range is on $4,400 on the corner by the daycare for $344,000. And 5 of them are under the price of $400,000 to $507,000. We have 5 homes that are currently under contract. Now, with these numbers, you can see the demand is still there. They're going to continue to come. We have a place where everybody wants to live. If I wanted to protect my property, I would have complained about the Coleman property. Now, the Coleman property also has fill on it. If you all remember the flood, it pulled all that sludge off of that hill into that area. That's illegal fill. As far as I'm concerned, it come off that hillside. Nobody allowed it to be there, but it got there. The house has been built there. They're taken care of. They engineered them. They did what you wanted to. They put up the walls. The builders here are willing to do that. I don't understand why it's becoming such a hard issue for us to be able to open this up for these developers to come and take this property, make it new, make it beautiful. It's not going to affect, I mean, if we're meeting the engineers that's going to protect these other people's property, then I don't see where there's an issue. There's other things that have to take place. Just because you approve these guys tonight, they're not going to go out and spend tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars right now setting up their plans and setting up their designs if they don't know if you guys are going to approve it. So if you approve it, it allows them to move forward, to get this thing done, and they still got to come back to the design committee. They still got to come back for final approval. They still got to come back to the water department. All these things they still have to come back to. Our engineer still has to look at it. So it's not like they haven't, let's let them do what they need to do. Just like you have Coleman Farm, just like you have the motor view that had no problems getting approved. I would love to see that stay the motor view, but guess what? It builds on. That's all there is to it. I would hate to see the roundabout that's going to be there, but it's going to be there. So there's a lot of things that we have to live with. And then number 2, have I taken my 3 minutes yet? Come on, bring it.
Sorry, I've got the gavel.
Okay, number 2. This is on a positive note. This is on a positive note. Something I
Okay.
want you guys to do. But this has really got me heated. This development thing, because I've watched it now go on for 3 months, and I'm thinking, guys, give them a chance to work with them. Help them out. Okay, anyway, beside the point. Okay, number 2. I 100% agree with the police officers and the firemen that you've agreed to hire. I think this is really critical to our city. I would listen to the scanner every night. Jolly can testify that I've been times I've shown up at fires just to see what's going on, which is probably not good, but I do. But I'd like to put something else in your guys' hat that might be able to help these guys recruit. Because I've talked to Chief Brinkman. I haven't had a chance to talk to Chief Jolly, but I just talked to him just a minute ago, and he's down 3 officers right now, or 3 guys who are hurt, broken arms, COVID, whatever. Help him with the recruiting effort. And I called Steve today, and he didn't even realize that this program was available, and I used it a couple years ago. There's a program that Riverdale has is an RDA program that allows us to help officers, help people do first-time homebuyers. Now, Utah Housing, I sit on the board of trustees for the Utah Housing Corporation, and we help get through the $25,000 deal for all officers. Now, Riverdale has something similar, and I would ask that you would open up this program and look at it a little bit deeper. The program that you have is very, very limited on what it will cover. It'll only allow you to land on 4400 South, west of River Valley, and east of Parker, excluding condos, mobile homes, and manufactured homes. So 4400 to Parker. Then 700 west to River Valley Drive, north of 4400, in conjunction with Parker Drive, excluding condos, mobile homes, and manufactured homes. This program will cover nuisance homes, troubled homes, or homes that have been abandoned or foreclosures. Why can't we open it up to everybody in Riverdale? If we're trying to get officers here and we can help them with a little bit more money for down payment and closing costs, why don't we put this on an agenda item, give these guys another arrow for their quiver, and allow them to use it as a recruiting thing throughout the whole city of Riverdale. There's about $600,000 sitting in this fund, and it's not only for the down payment assistance program. You could get a lender and a realtor together, sit down with staff, come up with our own little program of what criteria they had to fall in. It could fall in within the firemen or the policemen. They're working on trying to get the firemen the same thing this year. It hasn't come through, but we're working on it. That would give them $35,000 to keep them in our city. Wouldn't we want our officers to be able to buy something? But who's going to find something on 4400 and Parker Drive that, let's open it up. Let's give them the opportunity to say, hey, officers, we've got an opportunity. We can help you get into a home. We want to keep you in our city. Now, a lot of officers don't like to be in the city they work in, but if we can keep them here, let's keep them here. Let's open it up to teachers. Let's open it up to firemen, EMTs, whatever. Let's reconsider that. So I asked that you put that on an agenda item and maybe talk about it.
Okay. Thank you. We actually always appreciate the residents coming. A lot of nights. Well, there's a lot of nights where we don't have any comments. I'm always surprised there's not a single person here to say anything. So we do appreciate you coming, taking the time to be here and share your thoughts with us. We'll now move on to presentations and reports. I just had one thing for the mayor's report, kind of an interesting thing. The deputy director of the EPA was in Ogden this last week. That's a pretty big time. Anyway, Mayor Caldwell in Ogden City had rehabbed a section of the river in Ogden, 1.1 miles from Washington to Wall, where the Walmart is. And he was telling us they took out 2,600 tires and 9 cars, 9 vehicles, and like 9,000. He said 9,000 tons of trash. I just can't even imagine that. I think it's got to be 9,000 pounds, but I don't know. Anyway, it's a pretty cool thing. And I'm glad our rivers in Riverdale are clean at this point, but Riverdale, has a beautiful asset, and it's just something we need to take care of and keep an eye on. We're grateful for all that's been done to kind of protect our rivers, and I think we've done a great job with it. And it's good to hear that Ogden's cleaning theirs up and trying to make theirs, nicer and stuff. And so that was just kind of a cool thing. And that was, they were like kind of the big, hey, look what the city did for the whole EPA, and they did this. It was this Clean Water Act thing, and so I just thought that was kind of cool that Ogden made it into that. But, that's all I had. We'll turn some time over to Mr. Brooks for the city administration report.
Thank you, Mayor. Department heads' reports are all in your packet. Do you have any questions or comments on any of that stuff? Just going through some of that things. I'll go fast. I don't want to highlight a whole lot of things. You already have it in there. But the one that did kind of jump out at me is our community center usage. That's the one, I think it's page 16, somewhere in there in your packet. That's one that's got the pie-shaped thing on there. Just kind of interesting to notice the amount of non-residents versus residents use on that. I don't know if that's an increase or if that's just the way it always is, Rich, but a lot of non-residents using our facilities out there, especially the open play and the pickle. This is in the gym up there in pickleball, so I think some of those changes we recently made would probably be good for that to help balance that out a little bit. By way of employee recognition, we have Karen Dilly sitting at 23 years. I don't think she's here. Is she, Rich? Raylyn Bowman, who's in legal services, at 9. She's been in a couple different areas with us. Betty Wilson's another community service. And then our anniversary ones, Matt Guyman and Camille Jacobs. I don't see either one of them here, so we have certificates for them, but we appreciate their work. And then we got a couple of police officers and firefighters down below, so. Community development report, Mike, did you want to add anything on that? We do have a grand opening that we found out about recently.
It's more like a soft opening. They'll do more of a formal opening, but October 6th, Maverick will be open to the public is the date they're targeting. So just so you're aware. And then if they do plan to have a more formal grand opening, obviously we hope it's not that weekend because that's when ULCT is, and we don't want there to be a conflict, especially for the mayor since he likes Maverick so much. So we'll make sure to try to get a good grand opening date.
And other than that, that's all the reports we have under staff.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the council? Since we got the fire chief here, those are some cool pictures of that new heavy rescue. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful truck. I love this color scheme, matches our current stuff, and looks like a pretty neat truck. You'd mentioned the push-in ceremony. Do we have a date for that, or?
No, we're waiting for it to be delivered.
Okay. Okay. We'll just be, I'm sure there's some of us that would like to participate in that, and so just send us out that email, but okay. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to the consent items. Number 1, consideration to approve the meeting minutes from the September 6, 2022 council work session and council regular meeting. Any comments or changes to those meeting minutes? Councilor Arnold.
Move to approve the meeting minutes from September 6th meeting with the one correction that the mayor made with the typo.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. The second consent item is a discussion and consideration to grant the city staff permission to schedule future public hearings for budget amendments related to the tax increase revenue. Mr. Brooks.
We're just following usual procedure. It's just kind of long when we do this, and we just thought maybe we could speed this up a little bit if we were able to skip that step to come in and ask you for the public hearing and just go ahead like we used to do it and just go ahead and schedule it. You'll still get notice of it in advance. It won't be like it's a big surprise to you, but at least that way we can get moving on things a little quicker. So that was our intent on doing that. All this is you're aware of it. It's the funds that we have, so it'll be all those things and it's just in regards to that, the tax increment money there. So we're not going to be doing it permanently for other things and stuff. We'll still continue to follow that process to get your permission on things, on public hearing kind of things. So,
Okay, Councilor Hanson.
And just to clarify, even though we have a public hearing, if there's an action item following it to approve something, we don't have to approve it at that meeting because we've completed the public hearing. We can always table it and approve it at a future meeting.
That is correct,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we need a motion to approve that consent item. Counselor Arnold.
Move to approve consent item number 2 is stated within the packet.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any comments on the motion? All in favor say yes. Yes. Thank you. All right. We'll now move on to action items. Number 1, this is a public hearing to receive and consider comments regarding amendments to the Riverdale City fiscal year 2023 budget. Mr. Carden.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to re-emphasize really quick, so this is to the hire 2 police officers out of that increase in property tax we got through the truth and taxation process. The other thing included is we needed to upgrade our firewall and some Windows applications associated with our Spillman trunk line. And so that's coming out of the IT fund balance within that fund. It's not paid for out of the property tax. And so the details are included in the packet, and I can answer any questions before or after the public hearing if you have some. So.
Just if I could say something
Mr.
there, Mayor,
Brooks.
I put a resolution on your desk and I highlighted 2 sections that were different than what your packet says. One's a whereas clause, one of them's section 3, and all that does is just clarify that a little bit better where that money's being pulled from. So it was just a little bit easier to read, and Annie had pointed some concerns she had out on that. So that one would be the one that we would present to you or ask that you pass that one, and that the mayor would sign that one as the official one.
Okay. We would need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. The public hearing is now open.
Do we need a vote?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Okay, now the public hearing is open. All right. Seeing no public comments, we would need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. We'll now move on to item 1B, consideration of resolution 2022-32, adopting amendments to approve funding for the hiring of 2 police officers at a cost of $430,000 and IT upgrades at a cost of $40,000 to the Riverdale City fiscal year 2023 budget. Mr. Brooks or Mr. Garden.
The only thing I'd say about that is that it came in just slightly higher than what we projected before, because when we sat down and reevaluated those costs on the police officers, just a little bit higher than what we presented to you in the truth and taxation. So if that number's a little bit high to you, that's why. And it wasn't a lot, was it 10,000 or something? 5. So it's just slightly higher. So it might be a little bit different than what you'd seen before.
Mr. Carden, I'm going to ask you to come up for just a second. When we first started doing our tax increase, I went to Mr. Carden and I said, hey, this is too much money. We don't need it. It's too expensive. We don't need to pay this much for these police officers. And so could you just break down a few of the items that are going to the hiring, and he kind of explained it to me in a way I could understand it. So
Sure.
if you could just make sure, and just so it's on the public record, why does it cost $215,000 to get a police officer?
So we tried to include everything so that, because these officers are starting new, and so like a lot of times we have rollover equipment that we have one officer retire, we can hire a new one. So some of the stuff that's included in there is it's obviously wage and benefits, right? That's a big chunk of it, but they need a vehicle. Those vehicles aren't expensive, as Councilor Stevens alluded to in the work session. Even the equipment that's installed in those vehicles is very expensive. Not only is it lights and sirens, but it's cameras, it's audio recording, it's all sorts of stuff that goes into those. They wear body cameras, so we have to buy a new body camera. It's bulletproof vests. They keep some tactical SWAT type gear in their trunks. So, there's like helmets and different kind of body armor and things. They keep traffic cones. They keep even silly stuff from like hand sanitizer to Clorox wipes to their Office 365 licenses. They have multiple weapons like tasers. The tasers themselves cost about $1,500. Laptop computers. So anyways, that we tried to be very thorough in our list and make sure that we had enough funding to cover all of those. And so that's what makes up that $230,000. And so then, like we talked earlier, going forward, those costs will just kind of roll over and then we'll be up and running. So.
And I just want to help you guys know it's a very thorough list. Like I was like, come on, can't we cut something off somewhere? And he basically went through line by line and said, this is the cost. Chief Brinkman did a great job of coming up with those numbers, and we couldn't really trim it down. That's how much it costs to get it. These are new officers. They're additional, and that's why you guys passed the tax increase.
Can I just,
Yeah.
It potentially could be more. They're not necessarily, they're increasing our staff of officers. Hopefully, we're not getting new officers, because that would be even more expensive, because then you have to pay for their police academy and the patrol officers academy, which is expensive because they're on the payroll and they're going through the training, and hopefully they make it through it. But hopefully we're hiring officers who are already gone through the patrol officers course, so that they're certified and they're ready to roll. Because if they aren't, if we have to hire somebody new off the street, it's even more expensive.
Yeah, and the city does get a huge discount on the cost of sending an officer. Like, I believe that cost of that would go through that program if an individual pays it. It's like $50,000 or $70,000, but it's drastically reduced for the city. I think Scott was saying it's like $1,500 if the city pays for it. And you're right. And so we don't have, these wage amounts aren't for a step, like the highest step officer. There's going to be some budget constraints in who Scott can hire with these amounts, but he felt like he hopefully can do that, and that it should kind of get like mid-level type guys. And so that's what's included in the budget.
Okay, Mr. Brooks, I had a question about this resolution. They would need to approve the resolution as it was given to us. Is that, because it's not the one in the packet, right?
Yeah. Oops. Yeah, it's not the one in the packet, but we could approve it with the additions, and I would just, whoever makes their motion, just read those in or make the motion that that's what's currently before you at this point,
All right.
or with those additions.
Is there any other questions? Or go ahead.
If I could just say something in that, as we project this out, and we've been meeting a lot with Scott and different things, there's a strong likelihood we're going to have 3 officers probably after the first year that we're going to lose in retirement. So in reality, we will probably be putting somebody through academy fairly soon, and a lot of cities have had to turn to that because we can't find them anymore. And so these things keep getting more expensive for us. It's going to keep happening. And so then we try to buy them for at least a couple of years, and hopefully we can keep them that long. So this is just the reality of what we're faced with anymore. But yeah, we're looking at least 2, I think, if not 3. So, and maybe even more. It's crazy.
One
Question?
We got Luigi Panenzio right out of the academy, and he's phenomenal. So they're there. It's just not like
They are, and a lot of cities are turning to that because you have no other option. But you always run that risk. There's been some that have come out of the academy, and when they get out there on the street, they just say, "Not for me. I can't do it." So you always run that risk too. So it's scary, and then they don't hang around long. Once they get up to speed and ready to go, somebody makes them a higher offer. Salt Lake right now is short 60 officers, I think, and they can pay them a whole lot more than we can. That's how we lost a bunch a couple of years ago. So it's a mess, and we are juggling that constantly.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we would need a motion to either approve or not approve the resolution.
Be the brave one, Alan.
Is there more discussion on it?
So it's B.
Yeah.
Okay.
Counselor Stevens?
Move to approve the resolution 2022-32 adopting amendments to approve the funding for the hiring of 2 police officers at a cost of $430,000 and IT upgrades at a cost of $40,000 to the Riverdale City FY 2023 budget, with the added notes that are in writing that was presented to us at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay,
Second that.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you poll the council on this?
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
yes.
Counselor Hilton?
Yes. All right, that passes unanimously. Very good. Thank you. That's great. All right. Get working on hiring those new cops. So, all right, next. Number 2, discussion and consideration to set a public hearing regarding the ARPA funds and the CJC request. Mr. Brooks.
Yeah, we brought this to you a few months ago. The CJC Criminal Justice Fund is one that the police department uses quite often in some of their handling, especially of their sexual victim individuals. These guys are set up for that. It's a great program. Chief Brinkman loves this thing. The biggest drawback that we have, or at least as a staff, is just, do we make contributions, especially of this significance? We don't even make little ones. I think we had the Lakeettes one time wanted a donation that we backed out of because it's a private organization. So, but it's up to you. I mean, how you choose to do it. A number of the cities have started to fund this. Initially, when we brought it in, you weren't too excited about it, nor were we. But a number of the cities around us have started to do that, and they have used their ARPA funds. If you look at the definition on the ARPA funds, that it's iffy, but you know, they've done their homework, and they feel pretty safe that the Attorney General's office feels that it's something you could contribute those funds to if you want to pull them from that. That's up to you. I mean, I don't think we're in trouble or that we couldn't do it. I just question the precedents we set with it, and that's concerning. But it is a good program. It's valid. I'm not knocking that in any way, shape, or form. You're just going to make the decision whether or not you want to pay for that or you don't. The county is kind of picking up the bigger bulk of that, but they have asked all the cities to contribute their percentage share. It does concern me that a lot of ours comes as a result of people who aren't Riverdale residents, and I don't like that thought either. But it's up to you guys. Whatever you want to do, we'll do whatever and proceed. So we just need to get it back before you, and you got to make a decision one way or another how we're going to go about doing this, or if we're going to do it. So,
And I'll just share one more comment with you. As I talked to the other mayors, I said, how are you reconciling this with something we shouldn't probably be getting into and spending money on it? And they said their precedent, or how they felt it was the ARPA money was one-time money, and this is a one-time contribution. And that, so, and I mean, it's a hard decision for you guys. I don't envy you, but Councilor Hanson?
I just wanted to provide a counter perspective. I think I do take strong exception to comparing the CJC to the Lakeettes, or even to the communities that care, especially based off of what Chief Brinkman's explained to us about how often they use it. And in fairness, I do work closely with 3 victim advocates at Box Elder County. Box Elder County has a CJC, although a lot of the operation does fall underneath the county through grant funding. But it's not a standard nonprofit. There are state statutes that govern the creation of CJCs, and so when you're looking at a nonprofit like the Lakeettes versus something that's governed by state statute, I think that there's a clear difference there. Additionally, the investigation and prosecution of crimes involving children would be severely handicapped to be able to accomplish those things, and the experience for the child is exponentially improved by them having a CJC versus having to go into a police station. And for the prosecutors, I know that can make or break a case, whether they have the opportunity to use a CJC or have to handle it on their own with the police officers. I think another important thing to remember is school teachers are the #1 reporter for physical and sexual abuse of children. And so during COVID, what became apparent was domestic violence was obvious. We were having constant response in every community to the rise in domestic violence because people were at home and had no other option. What we didn't see right away were the crimes that were occurring against children because they were not at school with their teachers. The teachers didn't see them every day. They might have seen them through Zoom, but they didn't have the same access, and the children didn't have that opportunity. And so we've started to see a drastic influx of those crimes being reported to teachers now that the children are back in school. And that's just the beginning. We haven't seen the full reporting yet from what COVID caused. And so I don't think you can compare it to a standard nonprofit. I think the experience for the children, the ability to prosecute people who violate children in any way, I think that should be something that's important to us in our community. And it is unfortunate that, it's not all Riverdale residents, but those crimes are reported in Riverdale, and we have that responsibility. And so I just wanted to provide that counter perspective on that. I feel pretty strongly about it.
Okay, Mr. Cardin. And just before he starts talking, this is just the discussion and consideration to set a public hearing
Right.
regarding it. I mean, I appreciate your comments. They were very well thought out and but I mean, we don't have to make the decision tonight. We're just going to discuss setting a public hearing.
And to Counselor Hanson's point, like the CJC is awesome. It's required by state law. I don't think we're questioning that the CJC, what it does isn't great and that it isn't required. It's just, is this something that should be funded at a municipal level? The city doesn't have, like, mental health issues are a county type problem and those kind of things. Is this something the city should be paying for? And then at the same time, like, if the requirements is made by state law and they're funding a vast portion of this, like, why is this being pushed to the city? It kind of comes back to precedence too. Like, do we want to let this go forward with one-time money and the next time we have one-time money, or are we going to be in favor of that? And that's my concern, is like from the finance side of the city, is that precedence we're setting. I've worked with the CJC before, like, they do awesome, and we really, and Scott said they're invaluable. It's just, do we want to set that precedence as our municipality that we're contributing to that mental health and those kind of things?
Okay, any other comments? If not, we need a motion.
Before we make the motion, you mentioned that we might want to approach them to see if our share that they're requesting is in fact fair, and can we renegotiate that? Should we do that prior to setting this hearing?
I think we can set the hearing. It'll give us time to do it. But I don't think it's going to hurt us. What's it going to hurt us to ask?
So we ought to proceed
If they
with
adjust
that
it, yeah.
then, and-
Yeah. But I mean, if you're considering it, I'd go ahead and set the hearing.
And they can come and do a presentation. The CJC, if you would like, they can.
I thought they did. They did.
They
They've
did.
been here.
Well, did they do it in regards to this funding?
Yes.
Because they've been doing updated
You must have been on one of your vacations.
I think you're on paternity leave.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, probably.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Counselor Hanson.
I would make the motion that we schedule a public hearing to hear the community's comments and then to give the staff time to get some updated information for us so that we can vote on whether to support the CJC with their request or not.
Second that. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you poll the council?
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Steven, or
Yes.
Hilton, sorry,
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Is that everybody? Okay. All right. Looks like that passes, so we'll get a public hearing set for that. Move on to item number 3, consideration to untable ordinance 953 to approve proposed rezone request from agricultural A1 zoning to single-family residential R1-6 zoning for the property located approximately 3450 South Parker Drive in Riverdale as requested by Hugh Park. Do you want to discuss anything on this, Mr. Eggett?
Maybe just real briefly for the public and those that might be watching online. This matter came before the planning or city council on July 5th. The matter was tabled to afford the rezone applicant time to go and get a soil study and a floodplain evaluation. Those have been completed. The floodplain evaluation was complete. Well, it's a letter completed by Ensign Engineering Group, and the geotech report is by Christensen Geotechnical Inc. Also, we per the direction of a city administrator, had our city engineer look at both of those reports and provide his own report independently for guidance to the city council and city staff relative to the report as part of that conversation. So I didn't say that in the work session, but if you want to look at that report from Mr. Freeman, it's on page 75 in your packet. And with that, that's all I think I would add at this point. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, so before we discuss this, we would need a motion to untable it. Counselor Arnold,
I would
think you were
motion to
first.
untable this particular item as stated within the packet.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Hilton?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
No.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
All right. The ordinance is untabled. All right, so is there any discussion or questions? I see the petitioner here, so if we have any questions for them, actually, either one of them, we can have them come up. Do you have anything else to present, Mr. Eggett, Mr. Brooks?
No, I just wonder if we shouldn't have Mr. Park show up where he was supposed to get those reports and those studies and stuff. So maybe we should hear from him just to fill you in if you guys had questions. We've reviewed them and we've actually briefly spoke with him, but maybe you guys have some further questions in that regard because it's new information since last time. So you might want to be filled in on that.
All right, Mr. Park, we'll have you come up and just state your name when you get to the microphone, and please present what you found in your studies, and then we'll see if the city council has any questions for you.
Thank you. Hugh Park. You need my address?
No,
So-
just
okay.
you, Park, yeah.
So I just was reviewing the the city engineer's reports, but we did receive a report from Ensign Engineering for a flood study report and a soils report from Christensen Geotechnical. As we had initially thought, obviously there's some fill in this property, and our concept and our ideas in talking to the city engineer or the geotechnical engineer is the property is too high for what we need to do with what we want to do with it right now. We are actually going to grade that down a little bit, and I've brought Cam Preston from Ensign Engineering, who I'd like to have come up in just a moment and discuss some of the things that we're going to do with that property in order to avoid any problems for the adjoining neighbors. And so in discussing this with the geotechnical engineer, he has stated that cities do allow and have gone through this situation where there's fill on properties, that it is mitigated by taking out 2 to 3 feet of fill and bringing in a sub base and bringing in engineered fill on top of that. But he can't say indefinitely that that's going to solve all the problems. And if the city is willing to take a risk, and it sounds like on the city engineer's notes, he says, the city doesn't want to take the risk. My partner and I, Dennis Peters, have discussed this a couple of weeks ago before we even got this report. Our idea is that the swath where the street is going to be, from sidewalk to sidewalk, we're going to remove all of the fill out of the section of that area right there. The ground needs to come down more in conjunction with River Glen, which is right next door to us. And so by the time we take that down and then take the section of street out that has to come out for sewer and water and all the utilities that go underneath the street, we're going to replace all of that area with engineered compacted fill. And all of that will be observed by our engineers as it goes in, and will meet city and state specs of engineering and the compaction test that is required. Therefore, there's no risk to the city for the street ever sinking. And so the mitigation on the homes will be engineered helical piers, which will take care of the whole home. And I saw some comments in there from the city engineer. There are a few things that he was talking about, foundation walls and things like that. We will show you the design. It doesn't actually have a foundation wall, so there's a design that these helical piers companies have that is tried, true, and tested on how these homes are built. So that will mitigate the issue with the fill that will remain underneath the houses, and it shouldn't be a problem. So we know that there is a lot of issues or questions about whether or not the neighbors are going to be flooded out. By city code and state law, we cannot push our water onto somebody else. We have to make sure that we have a way to take care of that water. And so, Cam, do you have a moment if you want to come up here for a minute? And they've done it in our flood survey. They've gone out and done a they know exactly how high the ground is to the adjoining ground, and he has some thoughts on how this is going to be put together. Again, this is not a full engineered report. we don't want to go into all of that until we know we have an approval on the zoning, but this is kind of conceptually what we'll need to do.
Yeah, so my name is Cam Preston. I'm with Ensign Engineer, Inc. I'm a civil engineer. So we've done the survey of the property, and along the existing Rivergun subdivision, going from west to east, those existing homes have an elevation drop of 2 feet along the back of them. So there is some slope that we can get. As we grade out the property, we can get it to slope from west to east towards the river. There's some other things we can do. There is, from Parker Drive back to the back of the property, there's 9 feet of elevation. So what we can do is we've done some designs where we can run a yard drain system along the back of the yards of the proposed lots on the south side, to where we can get some drainage, where any drainage that comes off of those new homes will be collected and drained to the west, to where we'll have a detention pond before it drains to the Weber River. So the resident that was talking about some of those soggy areas, as of right now, there's a colored map. This is how the survey is. Right now, the property to the north of where these homes are is actually 2 to 3 feet higher. So right now, all of that water just essentially is draining to the Rivergun subdivision. So with some of the grading that we can do when we do this subdivision, having the road drain wet to the east towards the river and have those rear yards, we can actually improve the drainage of that area and actually push it back towards the river, so that we can kind of fix up some of because the undocumented fill has just been placed out there and no drainage has been taken into account. It's really kind of humped up in the middle. There's a real high point that's pushing everything south. So with this development, we can improve some of these drainage patterns and actually help so that this is not won't impact any of the neighbors to the south.
Thanks, Cam.
Thanks.
So with those issues and grading that, bringing that down, we will be able to address the issues that several of these neighbors have. So are there any questions that the council has for myself?
Councilor Hanson, we'll start with you.
I can't remember. It might have been in the city's engineer follow-up. It mentioned something about, what about the concerns about compaction for driveways and staircases, because those wouldn't be they would be placed on top
So
of that
what we're
fill.
looking at doing is coming out wide enough that it will pick up some of the driveways, and then the driveways would be able to be connected to the house and part of the fill, also the engineered fill that we put in there. So the driveways will be supported. And so we've already taken that into consideration.
Okay. And then on Mr. Wardle's comments earlier about, it sounds like you're going to be able to direct the water back, and I appreciated that in the report, that it said it would improve drainage in the whole area, but I guess I'm having a hard time picturing the buildup of that last lot so that his property wouldn't be impacted by
Cam, that's a
water.
question. This is talking about that back corner lot off of the cul-de-sac that you've talked about. If you can
like
explain
sloping
that
it.
better
It
than
said
I
something
can.
about sloping it to try to get the water.
So essentially, I think you're talking about this lot right here.
Yeah.
So essentially, and one thing, first perspective, the elevation at this point to down here, we have about 5 feet of elevation fall. So what we'll do is this home will be built up, and it would probably have a kind of a daylighted basement, and we'll just make sure that this lot right here will have positive slope, because the issue becomes, when you look at the floodplain, you get this little nook right here where we don't want to put any drainage. So as long as we keep this as the high point and we get drainage this way, that way, because when you look in the FEMA study, somewhere further to the south, there's a breach in the bank of the river does not maintain the 100-year flow. That's shown by the floodplain map. So in how we grade this lot, we just need to make sure that this lot is graded, that there's positive slope back to the river, so that this nook does not have any, there isn't any standing water and it doesn't get caught in this corner. That's what we were trying to describe. So.
And there won't be any basements. We may have to build up a retaining wall or something back there to make that transition, but there is not going to be any basements in this subdivision.
And I guess my point to that is, if you're doing a slab on grade, you could have where that backyard drops off,
Yeah.
and we just get some drainage, so that we made sure there's positive drainage, again, from this back corner back towards the river. And there's and the point of that is with the survey we've seen, there's enough elevation there's from this point to there's about 6 feet of elevation fall. So there's plenty of slope to be able to grade this lot, that rear yard of that lot, to provide positive drainage so that you don't get any drainage issues back here. So.
Does that answer your question?
It does. And then we had talked about the possibility of a development agreement, but that I assume would come later. Way after rezone, I assume.
Say that again.
If there was going to be a development agreement, at what point does that come into play?
I mean, we can really do that at any time if that's something we need to do. I mean, yeah, we can even start it now if we wanted to incorporate it into something like that as well.
Yeah, typically you see a development agreement get approved as part of a subdivision process. So obviously, if we went through a subdivision process, we could certainly have a development agreement be a requirement or component of that subdivision for this area. If that's the direction you want to head, obviously.
Just so that we know it's an option.
Yeah.
Hugh, I was just going to tell you, I was in the Panunzio Farms. Beautiful homes. I can't believe how nice those are. I just parked there. My wife's sick of me driving around looking at your stuff, but those are beautiful homes. You did such a great job on those.
Thank you.
And I would be thrilled with something like that back there. I mean, personally, I think that'd be a great.
That's exactly what we were planning on doing, is that type of a product back there.
Yeah. I do have a little bit of the concern with the elevation. I recently stayed in like a short-term rental type property, and I went out in the back, and the home behind it was way up above it, and it was just a weird feel. Like I felt like the people were looking at me,
Yeah.
And it was just, and so I know you're looking at a huge cost to get that out of there, and so that's a real
think
concern. I think.
We feel that this has to come down.
Yeah.
Because right now we're up on this hump, and things are kind of going like this, and we want more of a flat area.
Yeah.
And so, Cam, how far do you think this is going to come down?
So through this center section, through this yellow highlighted area, like in the middle, we'll cut 2 to 3 feet. I mean, the one thing is it's really drastic and it really drops off. So a lot of material needs to be moved so we can smooth it out, so we can get some smooth transitions, so that the cul-de-sac that kicks over here will work. So a lot of this material, I mean, this is really uneven and needs some grading. So there's some areas that we can put some material. So we anticipate it going down 2 to 3 feet through this area, and so that we can maintain. So in the end, these homes and this road grade will almost be even with the existing homes. So there isn't going to be a real elevation change from where these homes sit compared to the existing homes to the south. They'll be almost at the same plane.
Can you give me a little bit of better definition of what almost is? Like
within a foot or two. I mean, I don't think that they will. You're definitely not going to be terraced like 5-6 feet. We're talking. I mean, I don't know exactly what their finished floor is, but we will absolutely match their. I mean, we will maintain the existing grade at the fence line. And so the homes will probably be a foot or two above, so that the backyard has some slope, and then we'll incorporate that yard drain system also, just to ensure we don't run any of our stormwater onto their property. So,
okay, thank you. Thanks for your answers.
So most of the homes that we've got in that Panunzio Farms, I think there's 1 2-story in there, and that one is a little bit bigger. Most of them are single-story. There's one, I think, that we've got a bonus room in that actually faces the road, and there's no windows out the back. And so there shouldn't be any ominous feeling like somebody's above me and looking down on top of me and over the fence, because I understand that. And I think that our concept was if we can't utilize all of this fill in the areas where we've got to push it off, because there's some low spots back there. We've got to make that cul-de-sac, and whatever doesn't work, we'll have to haul out of there. And so, because we do not want to be sitting up above everybody, we want it to drain properly and to work properly.
You're kind of implying that you're going to remove the fill by spreading it around. Essentially, you'll be relatively close to ground level by the time you grade.
What do you mean by ground level?
Original ground level.
No, we won't be. I mean, we are going to be moving some of that dirt around, and if some of it has to come out, yes.
Oh, behind Mr. Wardle's house, where he sees probably 4 and probably elevates to 6 pretty quickly feet, you're going to take off all of that but 1 to 2 feet. Is that what I heard you say?
And I apologize, I don't know which home Mr. Wardle's is, but if he's one of these,
He's toward the east. He's probably one house away from the east point.
This lot right there.
so at this is Mr. Wardle's lot. At Mr. Wardle's lot, at that point, you know, where we hit this elevation, that's actually, this is dropped back down. We're actually hitting roughly, we will maintain the grade
Yeah.
along here. And I haven't, I mean, I'm speaking in generalities because at the same time, I haven't fully designed this road yet. But we'll definitely make sure to maintain this grade at the back of his home. And we won't be running, I mean, I do know we won't run any water onto him. I can't speak to
the
what
house behind him, overlooking him in an imposing way.
Well, because, so looking at the grades and what the back of his, I mean, that road will be within a foot or 2 of what his is. So those homes won't be any drastic elevation different from his.
Mr. Parker, you in a development agreement that
Two-
might
2 feet's
eventually
kinda big.
happen, are you okay with a restriction that has anything tall on the north end of the property?
You mean like 2-story homes or anything tall?
Yeah.
We'd be amenable to that. We'd be
don't
okay
have-
with
we don't
not
have
doing
an
2-story
ordinance for
homes
that.
on that.
I have an ordinance, but in a development agreement, we could probably do that.
Yeah, but in development agreement, like I say, I think there's 1 2-story home in the other subdivisions we've done, but we would be amenable to not put any 2-story homes along that south property line. All slab on grade, 1-story Ramblers.
The north is the town, or is the storage units. The south is
Did I say along the south property line? We wouldn't put any 2-story homes, and we'd agree to that in a development agreement.
I have one more question, and that is, you read the city's civil engineer's report about, did you not? And that basically,
Yeah, I just saw
think it says 3 or 4 different times, we really prefer and recommend that all of that fill be removed. However, if the city wants to take risk, then these are the mitigating options the city has. So did you read that?
Yes, I saw that, and that's what the part that specifically refers to in the engineer's report is the street.
Well,
So
I think it
that's
also
what-
applied to the other cement structures.
If you read the engineer's report, it actually talks specifically about the street in that section. And that's what the engineer's report from my engineer, Mark Christensen Engineering. And so that section of road, that's why we'll go in and we'll pull all of that fill out and bring in engineered fill.
And does that require you to dig down further below where the fill began?
No,
You
it
don't have
doesn't.
to have
Cam, do
compacted
you want to
fill?
explain how that works?
Typically, what we'll do is you go through and as you dig it out, as part of it, I assume you'll use intermountain testing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you go through, as you get down through, as you dig down, you'll have someone there observing it, and they can tell when they hit, because you'll end up hitting a previous vegetation layer.
Yep.
And so once they hit that, they'll come in and they'll do some testing and test the compaction rate and then see how compacted the material is. I expect you'll find it, because the thing is I don't know when the fill is placed there. It's been
About
several
12 years ago. I
So
think was in-
it hits a point where you'll hit a compaction level, and you'll definitely hit it because you add 6 or 7 feet of fill. It actually compacts the material even more. So once they dig through and they find that, they'll hit as they dig down, they'll find that vegetation layer, and then as they do testing, they'll hit those compaction rates, and from there you would come back up, and that's who you would work with. Your city inspectors will be out there, and the testing reports will be provided.
And I've worked with Sean, with Sean Douglas. He watches us like a hawk, which he should, and I'm glad he does. He sends Travis out and everybody else, and they come and they watch as we roll things in. They're asking for our engineering reports constantly, and they're out there when they're testing. I mean, when we did the sidewalks in Panunzio Farms, I couldn't pour a sidewalk until Travis had been out there to measure the slope, the compaction, and everything was perfectly right. So I've got a pretty good working relationship with Mr. Douglas and Travis and Jeff Woody, and so they watch us close. We go in and we, the engineer's recommendations, we follow it exactly, and I'm glad that Sean is out there and watching us the way that he does.
Councilor Arnold?
So we talked about the 100-year flood, and in my lifetime, 1983, and I think, Steve, you'd have to be the only one to correct me on this one, but, and maybe Veldon, you were living there, and Raiden, you were living there too. In 2011. I was on the city council. The problem isn't the property, the problem is the fill and the bridge. The width of where the water can go through the bridge and everything there. That has like everything to do with my vote, my opinion on this. In the Ensign document, it did say that it was higher than both the north and the south. That illegal fill, which was actually put in under a cease and desist letter from the city, they still continued to put the fill in there. When that 83, 2011 type river flow, so it's not even like a 100-year flood. It's like the speed of which the snow melts or something like that, and takes the river to the level that it was in 2011. That water's got to go somewhere, and it's going, when it goes through the bridge, that's the constricted point, and so it backs up from there. We had, I don't know whose house it was that I was in, but the water was actually going into the basement like a river, right through their back door. I mean, I was in their basement. There was nothing they could do. We were just watching the water come in. That was when before the fill came in, and the actual, that property was a lake. And I think that's going to happen again. And with the fill there, I think, first of all, if the city's willing, and us as city council are willing to take that risk for the city, if I'm, Veldon, I don't call you Ward, but, or Braden or Steve, I'm gonna sue you. I'm gonna sue the city, because they're gonna get like seriously underwater. The water's got to go somewhere, and it's gonna go in River Glen first. So for us to say, yes, we can do that, I think the city should still pursue the cease and desist letter and have that fill removed anyway. Regardless of whether you build or not. I don't have a problem with your product. I don't have a problem with the pylon design, because I've seen it built. Your product's great. That's great. But that bridge has not been addressed, and that's the key to the whole thing. Because we can, with the fill going in there, if you're 6 inches above where Veldon's lot and Braden's lot, and the whole subdivision, we put I wish Sean was here, but we put a pump, but all that pump does is take it back to the river on this side of the bridge. So when the water's backing up from the bridge and we're trying to mitigate that out of the subdivision, all we're doing is put it back in the river, which is coming this way in the first place. And this illegal fill, to even make this thing desirable for you to build on, is going to be a serious problem someday. When you build your stuff and you're gone and you're doing some other thing, and probably I'm going to be gone, and maybe some of these people are going to be gone off the council, we're going to have people in here going, what were you guys thinking building that? Because they're going to be high and dry, and these guys are going to be sump pumps and insurance mitigation and things like that. And the risk for the city is beyond anything. We always talk about risk for the city, and this is crazy. This is to even build there is, for you to even look at this and think that it's a good idea is just a bad idea.
So I guess my question is what the fill that's on that property, if it were not there, how would it mitigate the flooding that's happened?
So it creates a lake. So in 1983, I don't know what everybody used to call it, but we used to call it the pig farm. And there was a single house, and that thing was an island. And that was, yeah, it was, I mean, you're talking 6 feet of water in that entire area. So they approved the storage sheds, which they probably shouldn't have there. Even River Glen, you know, is questionable. But now that when you have that lower area, and I'm telling you, if you could figure out a way to get that water out of there, I mean, would you agree as a civil engineer, if you can agree with that water?
I was going to say the biggest, I mean, to me, I look at the way the floodplain is, the storage units have completely, if anything, if we leave it exactly how it is, the storage unit has exacerbated the problem. I mean, that has all been fill, and it's cut it off, and really, I mean, I know there's a legal fill. Even if it was full, it would just hit those storage units, and it's just going to pond. Honestly,
where?
I think the best thing to do is this area to the west really needs to be cleaned up, because I've walked this with you. This is completely irregular. There's no grading. There's no drainage. Some of this material needs to be pushed back to help create a berm, so that when it does rise, there is somewhere that this is cleaned up that water can pass through. I mean, and so there's probably not a great, I mean, we do have the elevations that we need to hit, and that's what we're going off of based off the FEMA flood study. So I understand exactly what you're saying, but with development, it does give us an opportunity to go through and look at those elevations and try to clean up this area so we can improve the drainage. Because right now, if you go walk back there, it's a rolling wooded mess, and there's nowhere. There's lots of places for it hit some rolled area, and then it diverts over. So with this development, a lot of that area can be graded and cleaned up so that we can improve the drainage.
And I agree with that, you know, to improve the drainage, but twice in my lifetime that I remember, I don't know if there was one in the 90s or whatever, but twice in my lifetime, I've seen that particular area, you know, one time where I'm wearing a city council jacket with boots, you know, just watching everybody they're not even doing anything. They're just watching the flood go in their houses. And this has changed that. You know, there's less possibility of anything. And Chief Shelley, this will fall on you because it fell on your predecessor. And, you know, they're out there every night watching this happen, and we put the pump in to send it that way. And it was, I mean, it was hell. It was for the city, because we allowed that development of River Glen, or Glen, not a D, River Glen. The storage sheds were annexed into Ogden City, right? So that didn't have anything to do with us.
It was approved in Ogden City initially, and then we ended up
That's why we had
taking
to
that, yeah.
But the thing is, I mean, without any change to the roadway and that bridge, you know, I've seen what's going to happen. This isn't a speculation. You know, this isn't a FEMA study. This isn't hey, this is what I think about this thing. I've seen it twice, and there is no way that I'm going to approve a residential development there. Not because of you, but because of these guys. You know, we need to protect the residents there and the illegal fill. I don't know how many cease and desist letters came out from Steve to that area.
There were a number of them.
Ignored, right? So it's not, I don't know what the term you were using is, something or other fill?
Impacted.
Undocumented fill. It's not undocumented, it's illegal. I mean, it's a flat out against city authorization to put in there. They didn't get a permit. When we saw it going in there, we sent a letter and said, stop it. They just ignored that, and now it's there. Matter of fact, if that water were to come this next year, you know, I think the owner of that property would be in serious trouble. And one of the things that was said earlier is, if you knowingly buy that property, knowing these issues that you're being told today, they're your responsibility.
Councilor Merrill.
Just in regard to the cease and desist letters, it sounds like there was multiple, correct? Was there any type of criminal procedure followed up there or criminal action taken there?
No, we never did. It was done so fast there wasn't a whole lot we could do other than try and stop him, but we didn't even get it filed to court. We had started to draft up some paperwork, but that's as far as it got.
I mean, the bottom line answer to the point Alan's raising is that all used to be lower than River Glen. So River Glen was graded to be about 1 foot to 2 foot to 3 foot higher than that property and the shed, so that the lake would form there. And when this illegal fill came in, well, first when the storage sheds were built, it took half the lake, but most of the lake was still there, lower than River Glen. The property owner illegally filled that without any regard whatsoever to the fact that that now elevates that property at the expense of Mr. Wardle. And so that's why I agree that that fill needs to be removed, because otherwise he made his lot more appealing to you, and you got a great technology to build on it, and you build great homes, but he benefits from having deposited that illegal fill at the objection of the city. So I can't support this, even though you build a great product. I'd love to have you behind me. You're 2 feet higher by your own admission, and you're going to spread that even.
Well, you know what? I'll bet you that you've got neighbors that are 2 feet higher than you in your subdivision.
Yep.
You know, you go up the street.
But they
100
didn't
yards.
flood. I did.
Well, I know, but that's what I'm saying. And so the 2 foot issue is not anyway.
Councilor Stevens, you had something?
Yeah, if I could, in the geotech report, I'd like to read in the second paragraph of 521, general site preparation and grading, based on the the test pits completed at the site, 7 to 9 feet of undocumented fill and topsoil cover the subject site. This undocumented fill and topsoil should be removed from below all stripe and spread footing. In general, we also recommend that the undocumented fill be removed from below interior concrete slab on grade and pavement. In this case, however, due to the large amount of fill present, we understand that it may be cost prohibitive. Now, I would just pause for a minute and add, if I understand this correctly, the same people who owned the property when the illegal fill was brought in still own the property. So they can deal with what they caused. That's my opinion. Okay, let me resume reading a couple more sentences. We understand that it may be cost prohibitive to remove all of the undocumented fill from below the concrete flatwork and pavement. Now, this is the point that I want to get to. If some risk of settlement is acceptable, some of the undocumented fill may be left below the concrete flatwork and pavement. The level of risk relates directly to the thickness of the undocumented fill left below the concrete and pavement. Now, who assumes that level of risk?
We do.
You know what? I'm going to beg to differ. Because when I was first elected to the council in 2017, in that fall, we had what we call the landslide up on the hill. There were 4 homes that were lost. Now, the homes were built almost 60 years prior to them being the the landslide causing them to be vacated and demolished. Yet the owners were speaking litigation and were taking actions to sue the city for allowing it to be built, even though it wasn't even incorporated. It was unincorporated land at that time. Now, but they were still bringing into litigation of the city for allowing it to be built. Allowing it to be built. That was their cause for litigation. 60 years prior.
Did they sue the city?
They sued the city for a number of issues. But anyway, but that's the point of it is that was one of their objectives. So at what point does the developer stop being
At what point
liable?
do you allow any development? Because if anything were to happen, then
Okay, by your own geotech report, it says a level, if you want to assume a level of let's see, let me find it, if some risk of settlement is acceptable. Okay, so they laid out in paragraph 2 of 5.2.1 what the geotech would recommend.
Do you know what they're talking about right there?
Yeah.
They're talking about the driveways.
Driveways and the slab on grade.
So if you read down further in that report, it talks about if you go to foundation 5.3.2, it is our understanding that due to the cost associated with removal and replacement of the large quantities of undocumented fill below the footings, recommendations for an alternative foundation system are desired. As an alternative to conventional strip and spread footings, its proposed structures may be founded on helical pier foundation systems. Helical piers are small diameter shafts with 1, 2, or 3 flights of an auger. The steel shaft is twisted in the ground to provide support. The helical piers are installed to a depth where predetermined torque is achieved, which correlates with specific bearing capacity. In general, the manufacturer's recommendation should be followed for the design, installation, and testing of the piers. At a minimum, we recommend that helical piers extend through the existing undocumented fill soils and be found to the underlying native soils. We recommend that reputable contractor with several years of experience with installing the piers would be contracted to install the piers. We recommend that structural engineers are involved with the design of the connection of the helical piers systems to the structure. So that right there, he was first talking about if you use a conventional spread footing system, that all the fill needs to be removed. This paragraph, now he says you can do that, remove all the fill, or you can go with this system, which mitigates all of those other issues, basically, and that's how he designed this his report.
Sorry, you done? Or you got more?
Well, I was just going to follow up. Again, this goes back to the owners brought in the illegal fill, and now we're mitigating the illegal fill. The owners who brought it in still own it, and that's where but I understand where you're
So
going.
my question is do you think that the owners are going to remove that illegal fill, or do you think it's going to remain as is?
I think it needs to be removed.
I understand that,
But
but
it's not for, it's regardless, it doesn't matter what I think they're going to do. When I'm, as a member of the city council, I work with what I call core values. And my core value as a council person is I protect the people who live here and their investments and those who have future investments. That's a core value, and that's how I see this as playing out. And that it needs to be removed in order to, and there's other reasons. But anyway, that's all.
Councilor Arnold's next.
I was just gonna say that even what you read proved the point. So you're saying where you build the house, you can drive the pylons down or whatever. But what Bart read talked about roadways, driveways, and slab on grade. So if you have a driveway, if you have a roadway, up to you're gonna have a 7 to 9 foot, because you're gonna go through the fill, but you still have to remove the fill. In the report, you still have to remove the fill on the roadways and the driveways.
we're removing it on the roadways and part of the driveways. Most driveways, to be honest with you, are built on fill as it is anyway, because most houses, as you dig them and you over excavate them and you come out the 5 or 6 feet, it's all fill that you're pouring driveways on
I'm
anyway.
just talking about this. I'm just talking about the report.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it said that this property is higher than the north and south on the roadways, is what it
Currently it
says
is.
in Ensign. And so the water mitigation, not just Belden's looking at his backyard or something like that. I'm talking about in a couple of years, 10 years, whatever. You know, this is really, really dangerous. And as far as development and building, as far as I know, the Motor View is a paper lot guy, and the up on Ritter Drive is not. They're both rezoned as R2, right? Both of them.
Motor View is R2, Motor View.
Motor View and up on Ritter.
R2 is Motor View and R1
R18
is Coleman.
Six.
Is the Barlow's.
Bartles.
Oh, Barlow's R1.
R16 on Barlow's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
R16. So as far as development and building houses, that's what, close to 90 homes that can be built, that we didn't go through any of this. I mean, density, we talk about density, but I don't care if there's one home in there with the fill. I don't care if there's however many homes you can put in there. This is a water problem. This is a danger to the neighbors.
So, Councilman Honor, I totally understand where you're coming from. If that film, I don't have the flow data in front of me, but in 2011 or 1983, which was heavily studied even when I was in school, if that fill material was there, you would have still had the flooding problem.
Correct.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
but,
so
but
this
it goes
is
somewhere else. So when if it's low there, and so in '83 River Glen wasn't there, so that flooded as well. But in 2011 it was there. That area flooded. So what I'm saying is, once it hits that bridge, the water's going to go somewhere else, and it's going to go in River Glen.
And
that's a done deal.
I guess the point I'm making is that I don't have the flow data for 2011, and I haven't read the studies, but you are right. I mean, if it is over a 100-year storm, which 2011 we had record snow years, and it did melt and it did come fast, it very well could have been over 100-year, and we, as in an engineering field, we have picked a level of service, and I can't guarantee that we won't hit a service that is higher than that. I mean, I don't know if that was the data, but the point is the water that's coming, I mean, whether all that material was moved, I mean, as heavy as it was, those subdivisions probably would still flood. I'm not sure that.
And that's why I say I would, if we allow this, I would, if I were these guys and I'm flooding, I would sue the property owner for illegally putting that fill in there. I would sue the city for allowing that. I mean, the city, honestly, right? I mean, we sent letters to cease and desist, and we should follow up and say, you know what, I don't care about development or anything. We said cease and desist before this happens, because I would think that the residents who flood would have action against the city for us not taking action on the cease and desist letters are evidence now. I mean, but anyway, I mean, there's not a chance on this planet so would support this.
I'm just the referee. Counselor Hanson, you're next.
This is it's a tricky situation. I'll be honest, I'm pretty split on it myself. Nobody likes to see someone who did something illegal that's caused this much trouble for you and for all of us to get away with it. But at the same time, do we just leave this a permanent situation? So I guess I have 3 thoughts or comments or questions. The first is, a lot of what you're saying has nothing to do with his proposed development. It's something that's already been built, was built by the River Glen developer, built by whoever built the bridge. That's not his problem. He didn't create that problem. And so are we just going to forever tell someone that they can't build because some other developer messed up? Mm-hmm. And so that's an issue that I have. The other is, Riverdale has never enforced that was illegally placed there. And so at what point, the city's already taken on the fact that we've let that guy do it. It's been years and years and years. It's a done deal. And so do we just continue to hold up the property when we could have something that could possibly improve drainage, improve housing? I mean, at what point do we pull the plug on being angry at this guy that, if we really feel that way, then why aren't we enforcing it? We still probably, I don't know, statute of limitations, but we still could. And so if we haven't pursued that in all these years, then we've already made our decision on the illegal fill. And so to hold up new development because we're still mad about it, I have a hard time with that. And I had a third question. Oh, the third question is for you, which doesn't help your situation, which I apologize for in advance. But I've lived here my whole life too, and the Pig Lady Farm, I'm very familiar. When he did bring in that fill, he covered fallen trees, he covered all kinds of stuff. And so how do you account for, what if you happen to fix the roadway, but those fallen trees are in a different spot and they rot and there's a collapse of infrastructure or private property?
We've addressed that. So I've gone down and we've put 7 test pits right down the middle of where the road is to see if there was anything. And all the research that I've done and everything that I've been able to find is that he hauled off. I talked to the people that hauled off. They hauled off all the trees, and they didn't cover up any vegetation. They went ahead and brought in the fill and put it right on the ground.
There was nothing underneath.
From what I understand. Now, I'm just going off of what I've been told. I can't testify to that. And so just what I've been told, we went down there and we dug 7 test pits right down the middle of the road, about 50 feet, maybe 100 feet apart or so. Maybe it was 6 or 7, but we dug all those. We didn't find any sign, any hint of any vegetation or anything of that nature. So in the roadway, because we're planning on pulling the whole roadway out anyway, it's all, if there is anything in there, it's all coming out anyway. So a question for you, if we do pull out all the fill, would you approve it?
I would.
Be specific.
When you say all the fill, are you talking over the whole 4 acres or whatever?
Yeah.
I would be inclined to give that look at that positively.
Would it have a fill even with River Glen on the southern boundary and
So
sloping
that's
toward
the
the
thing.
river?
So if we
Well,
pull
I'm
all that
talking-
out and we
when you say
bring some
fill,
more in,
back to the original, back to whatever was original ground.
so we're going to have to pull all that out, but then we're going to have to bring some more in.
So if your question is, if you're gonna put it a foot or two above River Glen, then I'd still be against it because you're gonna make the lake form in River Glen.
I guess when I was speaking a foot or two above, I was speaking to the road elevation, and there may be a foundation that was a foot or two above. I mean, at this point, I haven't fully designed the road. I was giving worst case scenarios because it hasn't been done, but we will absolutely match the property elevation. There won't be a foot or two higher at the property line. We'll absolutely match their property elevation.
But the river flows from the south, basically from the southeast toward your lot. And so if you're a foot higher eventually at where you meet the road, that's a foot wall that's going to force that river up into the Mr. Worrell's
And I
property.
understand exactly what you're talking about. I guess when I was speaking, I was referring to lots up in here.
Uh-huh.
But we also talked about at this lot, we will lot 107 will absolutely be lower to create positive drainage from the corner of this lot back to the river. So in this scenario, we absolutely will not be higher, a foot or two higher than his lot. Now, I was speaking to compared to these lots, I don't know exactly. I mean, a foundation may be a foot or two higher, but there will absolutely be positive slope back towards the river. And we will definitely get this area graded away so that it doesn't dam up for this as it is today. So,
Counselor Stevens.
You asked me a question. I want to ask you a question. Why did they put in the fill dirt?
I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know the owner. I've never met him.
Because he got a deal from the hospital. I can give you a little bit of what we knew at the time. He apparently worked out some arrangement with the McCady Hospital. That's where it came from. And so they paid him to take that fill down there and put it in that spot. So I'm assuming it was a financial benefit to him.
Well, he was in
I
there.
can speak to that as well as being a development engineer. You have to match the existing road. I mean, if you know one day you're going to develop and you're going to bring in a road, if that would have dropped off significantly from Parker Drive, because I don't know what it looked like before, but at some point you know you're going to bring a road or development in, and you know you drop off, you know you're going to have to bring in fill. It very well could have been a financial benefit, but also know that, and he didn't do it correctly, that in the end when you do to come to develop, because you're going to build a road, you're going to have to bring in some fill. So.
And would it have been the same nature as what is there?
It could have been, and see, so when you talk about undocumented fill, that's an engineering term, and all that means is at the time that it was placed, it wasn't documented how it was placed. That's where the term comes from. So anytime when you read a geotech report, it just goes to show that fill has been placed, and they don't have any documentation that it was placed and compacted correctly.
Isn't it true that whatever fill got legally put in there would have been compacted fill?
That's hard to know. That's why you have to have documentation, because as it comes in, you have to have documentation of what the fill material is, because there are certain clays that are just not compactable. So you have to document what the material is made of, and then you also have to document how it's placed. So for instance, if they just brought it in and were dumping it truckload at a time and then smoothing it out, that's not documented material.
That's what they were doing.
Yes.
They smoothed it out once the cease and desist took place.
And that's and to be considered to not be documented, it needs to be brought in lifts, so in foot or two, and then
that's
compacted.
What the storage sheds did. They spent I don't know $500,000 to bring in the compacted fill.
And that's essentially what we're proposing to do within the road, is to take it back out, put it in, document it so that it is put in per what Riverdale standing wants, so that it is a good standing road. And then the helical piers lets you go down to the natural ground where you do get, so you're just bridging the gap between the two. I mean, it is something that I've seen developments from Farmington to Kaysville where they have peat moss, and we're doing helical piers 20 feet down where you just, the natural soil isn't suitable. It is an engineering standard that's been adopted across the state multiple times. So, and those work as bridge. You do still have a strip footing across that, but now that strip footing works as a beam, so it spans from point to point to get down to a suitable bearing capacity. So,
Councilor Hanson, you're next.
I'm ready to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 953 conditional upon the removal of the fill from A1 to R16. And based off of what has been presented that he'll do to address all those issues. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, that motion dies for lack of a second. Further discussion. We've got a tie. Actually, we got three people that'd like to go. Councilor Arnold.
So first I want to apologize if I seem angry. I'm here, I'm elected to protect the residents in that area. I don't live there. When that floods, I'm going to put my boots on. Well, if I'm still on the council, I'm going to put my boots on and I'm going to walk that thing. If I'm not on the council, I'm going to drive my car over there and like Lori and watch the carnage, you know? So either way, my job, all of our jobs, is to protect the residents there. Bad decisions, I take exception to what Annie said about somebody made a bad decision, so we're going to make another one. You know what? They made a bad decision. I honestly think, well, River Glen was a bad decision because they actually had to go in and put a pump in, and because it wasn't designed properly. So we put a pump in the storm drains to kick it out back out to the river, which caused this circular thing. So I'm very passionate. And when the vote is taken, Steve Brooks has taught me over the years that when the vote's taken, I'm comfortable with the decision. If I'm on the losing end, I voted my vote, and it's one of 5. And I'm comfortable walking out with whatever the decision is. I'm just saying that I've seen this area, and a bad decision on top of bad decisions is a bad decision. So, I just want to make sure people understand I'm not going to be down there with a bucket, you know, helping them with their homes, because there's not going to be buckets to be had, because all you do is throw it back out into the river, which is coming into their house. And, you know, if you're comfortable with that and that risk mitigation that the engineer's talking about, that's nuts. We have more responsibility than that as city council members.
Councilor Stevens, would you like to make a comment?
Okay. You asked a question, and when you were here before presenting, the gentleman that's seated behind you also put forth a lot of what I call what-if questions. Well, if we, will you approve? If we do X or whatever, it's like, then do it. I mean, show, it's, you know, action. I mean, if there's anything, there's some of us who have a lot of concern about the illegal fill. And it's just like at some point in time, somebody's going to have to take action on it. Now, I get it, it's going to be expensive, but the good news is, I think we left before, we've got a potential development going on up on 1500, and they need some fill dirt. But anyway, the point is action, from my perspective, taking action is a lot more effective than asking, well, what if questions? Well, if we do this, will you do that? I mean, it's just kind of, you know.
I guess I don't understand what action you asked for. A flood study.
Start taking the fill dirt out now. You know, if we take the fill dirt out, we approve
So wait, you expect us to go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars based upon the possibility of getting an approval?
It goes a long ways, and Who's the owner that brought it in?
Didn't
Hey, you
pass
can
them.
laugh all you want, smirk
So-
at it, have your chuckles, but that's a level of commitment.
So, Steve, I have a question for you. They keep on referring to illegal fill. It's undocumented? What's illegal about it? I mean, this dirt is the same dirt that could be, like you say, we could take this dirt. What magically changes it from illegal to legal up on 1500 North, the one that you said that they need a lot of fill? Why, if they can use the same dirt, why can't we use that dirt? So, what's the difference between illegal and legal dirt?
I think the biggest thing is it was just done without any supervision and to the point where we have no idea what's in there or what was done, and so we can't say that it's safe in any way, shape, or form. Whereas if we moved it up somewhere else, that could be supervised, and we could say that, yeah, it'll work or whatever. So this was just done like fly by night, just within the span of a few days. And we have no idea. I wasn't even aware they took trees out. So that's how fast that was done. So that was always our concerns on those things. We have no idea what's in there. None.
Comment from you, sir. State your name, please.
Dennis Peters, 2219 East Laredo Way, Cottonwood Heights. I'm Hugh Park's partner, and I'm very glad I am his partner. So there's three scenarios that we've come to at this point. Let's just back off from all of the little definitions and say we have three scenarios. We'll leave it the way it is. We remove the undocumented, unlawful fill, or we go ahead with a development that we've proposed. So my question would be to Cam, which of those three is going to mitigate the flood issues? Because the flood issues, we can take all the fill dirt out. It is costly. We can do that. But we can't control Mother Nature. We don't have any control over that, nor do you. And so the flood issue, to me, really is the underlying issue here. Is there something that we can do as developers of this property to mitigate the possibility of future flooding?
So removing the fill will not solve the flooding issue. Removing the fill and replacing it as is will not solve the flooding issue. I mean, all we have from an engineering standard is we have a FEMA study that's done by the federal government that gives us a 100-year floodplain. This is actually Zone AE, which means it has Zone A is your 100-year. E designation says that it's been evaluated. So if you look at the effective map along the river, they give an elevation of what the 100-year floodplain elevation is. And so per the design that we're proposing, we're showing that our elevation along the back of these proposed homes and along the subdivision to the south are all above that elevation. Now back to Councilman Arnold's point, there are a lot of, when it comes to drainage, there are a multitude of factors. During 2011, a tree could have been slammed into the bridge, which effectively reduced the capacity and made it flood higher. That's something that we cannot design around. We try to do our best with maintenance. You talked about how the river has been cleaned up. A lot of those things are being done so that, because over time as growth comes, the effectiveness of the river gets less and less and less. And so all we can do is design to the standards that we have. And so what we're proposing is a design that will help clean up the drainage, help push everything back to the river, and be above the FEMA floodplain evaluated elevations of the 100-year floodplain. In my opinion, a design and development of this lot to improve the grading and the drainage is the best chance to help prevent any flooding. Now, I can't guarantee that because there are so many factors of, it could be higher than a 100-year floodplain. You could have a blockage at the dam. There are a lot of mitigating factors where flooding will continue to happen. As good as engineers like to think we are, there is no perfect solution. There are a lot of mitigating factors, but doing a development and being able to change some grading and putting some infrastructure development dollars into helping increase the drainage, in my opinion, is the best way to solve the drainage issue of this. The undocumented fill, yes, it's illegal. It does create other concerns, but it has nothing to do with the drainage. The amount of flows coming down the Weber River, whether this had fill or no fill, in those large events, 2011, 1983, the fill or no fill has no impact on the flooding that can happen.
Then I appreciate those comments. They're logical and very businesslike and based on education, and thank you. But in reality, a lake forms there in the last flood, and it didn't encroach on my property because my property was a foot or two higher than the lake. You're going to take away the lake. So something's going to happen to my property that didn't happen last time. But Mr. Wardle's as well, and the rest of the neighbors along that strip. We're going to get that lake. It's got to go somewhere. I don't know what caused it. I don't think there was a log. I'm pretty sure I
It
was
was
very
saturation.
aware. It was just.
There was just so
I
much
understand
water
what you're
at the
saying, but the FEMA map is contrary to what you're
I
saying.
get it. But the
FEMA
reality is the river leaves its bank at the bench. You probably went and found the bench where the river bends and leaves its bank. It flows into all that overflow area, mitigation area behind River Glen, and basically forms a lake right there waiting to enter back into the river at the bridge. And that lake's going to form at the next flood. I don't know how bad the lake's going to be, but you're taking half the lake. The sheds took the other half. And so I agree with these gentlemen. If we allow this to happen, everybody that gets the lake in their backyard is going to be angry at somebody. And who are they going to be angry at? They might be angry at you, but very likely we have deeper pockets. So they're going to be angry at the city. They were when it flooded last time, and the illegal fill wasn't there, and the storage sheds weren't there. But some homes still flooded, and it's not the FEMA map that flooded them. It's the reality that the river leaves its bank at the bench, and flows onto the other side of the riverbank, which is basically your property.
Which is the FEMA map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the FEMA map shows that can't happen or that it won't affect you or whatever, but you're going to be higher than Mr. Wardle's backyard at the curb. At some point between the bridge and Mr. Wardle, you guys are going to be higher. And therefore, you're going to block the river from, I don't know what, from flowing back from Mr. Wardle's property into the bridge, right? It's got to go somewhere. I don't know. I'm just sharing with you why we're all worried. You have really logical explanations, and I don't doubt them, that's what your data shows, but the anecdotal information that we all have witnessed says otherwise, and that's what we're trying to wrestle with here.
And Cam, just to share a little, I live in the same subdivision, and we had a land drain that was designed by engineers to not flood our homes. It was designed to work by engineers, and it didn't work. It flooded our homes.
It reversed.
It reversed. It flooded. The land drain was what was flooding our homes. So I mean, when you talk about these, engineered or FEMA and all these things, I kind of get it why these guys are kind of like, yeah, I mean, on paper with a calculator and a protractor and all that stuff, okay, great, but reality sometimes is just kind of hard,
Totally understandable. The point I will make, and this is the last comment I'll make on it, is the flows coming down the Weber River. The amount of area that would be the lake is as a drop of water in a bucket compared to the water coming down. So, I understand what you're coming at, but in my opinion, your argument is flawed.
Okay, we had Councillor Hanson had a comment.
I'm just ready for another motion. I'm willing to make another one unless someone else is ready to.
Let's have you make it.
I'll make the motion that we table this item until a future meeting.
And is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay.
Nice try.
Once again, this motion dies for lack of a second.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Councilman Hanson, what would be the trigger to bring it back? If you wanted to table it, what would you be looking for from these gentlemen to bring it back?
I think you've provided really good information, insightful. I think it's been a really good discussion, to be honest. But I feel like we're impeding the rest of the meeting, and it doesn't look like there's any resolution in sight at this point. And so I think that would give them time to consider your comments and to see if there's a new approach that they'd like to take, or you may be ready at some future date. I don't know.
I mean, I'm ready to say no. I don't know what these other people are, but, because I'm open to further discussion. A lot of times the discussion is through Mr. Eggett, who has a lot of technical understandings and whose opinion, and our engineers and whatnot. But without a trigger or some further, I'm
Well, and we
not
could
sure
ask
what
the
we're trying
staff if they, I mean, you've seen what they've presented, you've seen all the reports. Do you have a recommendation for us? Should we table it? Should we, with a trigger, should we deny it? Should we approve it? What should we do?
I got something.
Councilor Arnold has a
I
comment.
got something real quick on this. On the agenda, all it says is we untable it. So does that refer back to it being on the agenda because it doesn't say we'll take any action with it? Untabling it, does it make it? so we
It comes
can't
back
even
to
take
where
it?
it was before, which we had it there for an approval, yeah.
Okay.
If I could just maybe address something quickly, and I'm not saying it's going to solve it, but we always do have, and based on, what Hugh said tonight, we may be able to look at some things if you did table it as far as removal of fill and even a development agreement or something down that path that might get you a little bit more comfort. If we can even get there, and I don't know that we can, but it is an option if you buy us some time. Mike, do you agree with that?
That's what I was going to say, is there's always an option of a development agreement, and we know more recently the state legislature has said that that is an option. Maybe I don't know, maybe there's some kind of compromising in terms of a development agreement that might be looked at, were it to be tabled, to come back at a later date. That maybe is an option that could be explored. I don't know.
You guys, okay?
I think it changes the dynamic if that fill's removed. And I don't know how much that's going to cost or if that's even an option, but it would change at least how I would look at it. But whether or not we can get there, I don't know.
Council,
I go with that, also what he just said, because that was my concern. Taking action goes a long way to show that there's some genuine sincerity in resolving this. Anyway, sorry.
Councilor Hanson, are you getting ready to make a motion?
I was going to restate, maybe in a different way.
Mr. Peters would like to make a comment real quick.
I just want to make a real life comment on what can happen down the road. We bought our lot where we live now 30 years ago. It's on Little Cottonwood Creek. Well, Little Cottonwood Creek, when there's these flood events, overflows its banks at some point in time. What the county has done is gone in and dredged Little Cottonwood Creek. It was about 2 feet below our property height when we first moved in. Now it's about 7 feet. So our lot, which was in the floodplain, more than half the lot was in the floodplain when we bought it, is no longer in the floodplain. And so when you talk about the bridge is the real issue, right, with the flooding, are there things that can be done to enhance the amount of flow that can go through the bridge? That's the problem. We're not
It's
creating.
also leaving its banks. Both of those are combined.
Right, but if more water could go under the bridge, if it can be dredged below the bridge,
You're still
for
going to
example.
have it flowing into your property by the fact that it leaves its banks up by the bench.
But the point that Cam made is when you have so many CFMs of water flowing, it's Mother Nature at work. And so unless you do the best you can, and the bridge is the problem, that's really outside our prerogative to solve. And the experts tonight have, of the three scenarios we talked about, doing nothing, removing all the fill, or developing it as we've proposed, it doesn't really change the problem of the flooding. It doesn't make it worse. We're not going to make it worse, but we can't guarantee that we can tell the people that they won't be flooded again, because it will happen because of where their houses are built. Now, to remove all the undocumented, unlawful, whatever you want to call it, that can be done, but then what? And then do we come back, we remove all the fill, then we come back and the flood issue still comes up and we still don't have approval. You're asking us to spend, we already spent tens of thousands, but now you're asking us to spend hundreds of thousands to mitigate the fill issue. And the irony of all this is that there is a neighboring property, 3 acres actually, that this fill could be used on right across the street. Anybody want to guess who owns it?
Well, I don't need to guess. I know who owns it, but
So do we.
Yeah, okay.
But the thing is, so the development with our eyes closed, my eyes closed, I think what Councilor Stevens is saying isn't an ask. We're not asking you to do anything.
Right.
That's your call. That's 100% what you do. But in my 1/5 of the vote, need to protect
Exactly.
River Glen. And it's already there. I think the city's at risk for suit. I think the property owners, you're not at risk for suit right now because the fill was brought in there. I totally disagree with the civil engineer that there's, because the water's going to go.
You seem like such a nice guy.
That's great. Let's go to McDonald's after and get a Coke. The thing is, the water's going to go somewhere, and you can engineer all you want. The amount of water that I saw not going through the bridge goes somewhere. It just back, and when I was talking about that earlier, the civil engineer was nodding his head, yes. It's not going to go where it's filled now, where it went before. It's going to go further back. It's going to go, as a matter of fact, I think on the other side, I don't know if it's probably on the other side of the berm.
Back is west.
Granite's filling all that in, but I think that's on the other side of the berm of the road and stuff.
So I have I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, as that water, say in 2011, just snowpack melts quickly. We get a lot of snow, warm temperatures, it melts
Right.
quickly. It's
gonna
going to
flood.
back up somewhere.
Yep.
With that fill there, you're
Yep.
not going to have the lake that they're talking about. It's going to go into River Glen. If I was a River Glen owner and my house was flooded, I would be coming to the city, I would be coming to the property owner, and I would say there's undocumented, unauthorized fill that you just dumped in there with cease and desist letters from the city saying, you know what, we told you not to do that, but then the city didn't do anything. So I would suggest that the city does do something, but these guys' houses flood, we're liable, and he's liable.
So I have a question for the city attorney. He hasn't had any real hard questions tonight, right? So having had a public discussion of this project and having discussed all of the issues about the undocumented fill, the unlawful fill, the possibility of flooding, if the council were to deny our application, which we have testified would mitigate to some extent the flooding possibilities, does that make the city more responsible?
As of tonight? Is that what you're saying? If they deny it
If we're
tonight?
denied, does that make the city more liable?
No, not between you and us? Is that what you're saying?
No, between the city and the public. That's what you're concerned about.
Yeah, but it's.
Oh, you mean on
No,
flooding?
it does not.
No, that, I don't think with anybody else it would hurt us. And even in regards to you guys, the courts give a lot of deference to the council if they have a reason to deny it.
Right.
And so I think we would be fine for that because I think they've
Our
manifested a
argument is
reason
that
for it.
what we are planning to do would mitigate to some degree. We can't eliminate it, but to some degree it would mitigate the flooding. That's what our engineer has testified.
It does
tonight.
change it a little bit in that degree, but that still doesn't guarantee that it would get approved,
It
and that would be the
mitigate
concern.
flooding on your property, on your development, it would mitigate that. It would exacerbate it to the other people around it. And that was his very words, actually. Because I don't use acerbate very often.
Was not my words.
That's what you said.
Us doing a development will not make the condition any worse for River Glen. Let me make that very clear. Anything we do, and in my opinion, it will actually help River Glen because we will do some grading in the rear of this property to help drainage. Now, there is a flooding issue for them, yes, but by adding development, it will not make their issue worse.
So I asked this earlier, where's the water gonna go?
It's going to go.
Figured it out, where's the water gonna go? Is it
I
back
guess
to-
when I don't know how to answer that question. The water in what scenario? In a 500-year flood, it's going to flood them.
Well, it's done it twice in my lifetime, so I'm old, but I'm not that old.
Well, yeah. I mean, you asked me where's it going to go. I mean,
83 to 2011,
I
I'd
can
say it's
only
25 years
design
flood.
to what the FEMA. I mean, we have resources. I can only design to what FEMA floodplain, what the floodplain says. So I can't speak to what scenarios you've seen in your lifetime because I don't have that raw data. But we can meet the ordinance and the floodplain standards with this development and help push the water back towards the river. That I do know. Now, so yeah. But again, the development will not exacerbate the situation.
Counselor Stevens.
Just to follow up, it was,
coming to a head.
I watched the field go in, literally. I drove by it one day, and a couple days later, it was like, boom, it was big, whatever. And when I followed up with with the city administration, it was like, oh, is there gonna be something? No, this was, time had passed, and it's like, yeah, it's there, but it's, the owners are gonna be responsible for it, and it's gonna, in how they sell it. That's how it was gonna be adjudicated. That's the impression I got from talking. So even though they didn't haul them into court, they were still responsible if and when they tried to sell it or develop it. Okay, that's all.
Counselor Merrill.
Okay, I just want some clarification. So according to the civil engineer, correct me if I'm wrong, did you say that this development would not make it worse if it were to flood? It would not make the conditions worse. It could potentially make them better, correct? I just want some clarification on that.
Yes, that is my opinion. That right now, I mean, the flooding has happened in the past. You keep, Councilman Arnold keeps bringing up 2011. Was the fill placed before or after that?
It was after.
It was after.
Yeah.
So the point being is the flooding for River Glen is there regardless. Nothing we can do on this development can make it better, or meaning better. What I mean is that we can't make it worse. With the drainage we can clean up some of that area, create a nice positive slope back towards the river, so there's not some of that rolling material that's out there. But in those scenarios, I don't know the historics of what happened in 2011. I did speculate with the tree. There are a lot of mitigating factors, but according to the current FEMA map, they are not in the floodplain. So I don't know what happened in 2011. And when I say the floodplain, they're not in the 100-year floodplain. And with the development, we can do the same thing with this property and keep it out of the 100-year floodplain. But what's happened in 83 or what happened in 2011, I don't know the details of those, but those could happen again because there's an engineering standard, which is 100-year, and over 100-year, yes, it could flood. But to make a point, there are a multitude of issues in your city that over 100-year you're going to flood. And that's across the board, across the state, because the standard of care in the engineering that has happened across the state is we just design to 100-year. So,
could this development potentially make the outcome better in terms of if there was a potential flood?
Having walked that rear property, going back there and doing some grading, and maybe we could work with the city, because the other thing that could help is some grading could be done along the Riverdale City piece, because it also rolls and almost drains back towards the River Glen subdivision. With some equipment back there, some grading and drainage could be done to improve the area.
And then just a question for Steve real quick. If that's their opinion of this situation and we were to deny that, and then that area were to flood and we potentially denied something that could have bettered that outcome, are we liable for that end of the decision, which I think is a little bit of what was alluded to already?
Again, it still comes down to what your reason is for denying it. And if that reason is still valid, you'd still be fine. That doesn't concern me.
Okay.
It may or may not. They're speculating, we're speculating, even with the improvements, we still don't know. So if you still had concerns there and they were valid, you're still okay.
Oh, sorry. I looked away and now there's hands all over. Let's see. Who went up first? Okay, Councilor Arnold.
So, in 2011, when they say push it back to the river, this property was the river.
Right.
We got reports every meeting by the bench. When Steve's talking about the bench, every meeting they talked about where the water level is to the bench. Like if you go over there and you see the bench that's by is there restrooms there? By the parking lot.
No, it's down. Did you see where the bench is? You know where we're talking
I've run past the bench.
You'll see the
Okay.
bench. And the bench
You see
is
where that
in
leaves,
the water.
where that bend takes place, and that river just easily overflows the path right there.
There was no possible way to take anything back to the river because that property was the river. Like,
The grading wouldn't have affected that.
I mentioned that I
Drainage
had
wouldn't have
flowing
affected
water 1 foot behind my property line to the east, flowing toward the north.
I mean, it's crazy, the water that was, I mean, it was coming up through the storm drains, the manhole covers, the water that was coming through there. There is no possible way that his mitigation of this thing it was the river. So if you put in 7 to 9 feet of fill and you take it down a couple of feet and spread it around, that water is going to go somewhere. If you have the same thing that happened in 2011, and I guarantee you it's going to be in these guys' homes.
To Cam's point, the amount of water that's in that, what you call a lake, if that lake were not there, I mean, that water is still going to hit that high level, whether that lake is a little bit lower or not. Whether the fill is there or not, that water is going to be, this lake is not a relief point.
Oh, no, it is.
The
If you
lake is
have
not
if
big
you have
enough
a
to
bucket-
allow that much relief
If
for
you
the
have
amount
a
of water
bucket,
coming
if
down
you
the
have a
river.
bucket of water and you put a balloon fill in that water, the water's going to rise, correct? So what the thing is when you have fill, it's going to go somewhere else. In a bucket, it's going to go up. In this scenario, it's going to go south because it's not going to go north because that's where the bridge is at. It's going to go south. And,
But the
I'm just
amount
saying,
of water
I've
that's
seen
coming
it-
down there.
I've seen it right there, right
Yeah.
where you're talking about.
Can I understand that you've seen it, and I've made a note. I'm going to go find the flow data from 2011, and I want to point out that if that is over 100 year, you're now enforcing on this property something that's outside of even your own ordinance. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Are we required to design a subdivision greater than a 100-year storm?
I have to caveat, I'm not the city engineer or the public works director, but per comments on subdivisions, that is the standard that they design drainage for.
Right, but what we're talking about is A1 versus R2, right? So we're not talking about developing a subdivision, we're talking about rezoning it so you can put a subdivision in there. We're A1, that's agricultural, that's for floodplains, that's for if you want to plant some alfalfa in that field, take the whatever out. And I'm not against development. Lori's comment is totally wrong. If this, the only thing I have a problem with is the water. If this did not have the flooding issues that I saw, I would be all over this and saying, you know, it's great. Because I'm a private property guy. I think, you know, I don't own the property, but I do represent the residents of this. I represent these guys who live there.
Counselor Stevens.
Quick question, maybe a little lighthearted, but it has a point. On that property, the current property, there was a little triangular corner on the southwest portion. Is that, who owns that?
It's the sign.
Billboard.
Oh, the billboard company.
Yeah, that's why that's there and it's cut out.
Okay, so can it be, did it receive any fill? No. Okay, so it could be part of the floodplain. No, I'm being facetious.
It semi behaves like a wetlands already as it sits.
Oh, okay.
Currently. Yeah.
So it's not developable other than for the pylon? Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? If there are no other comments, a motion would be in order. Counselor Arnold.
I would move to deny, I gotta get back to where we're at, move to deny ordinance 953, stating the facts that were entered on the record tonight with flood issues and fill issues and concerns that the city had with fill prior to any possible development of that property.
All right, we have a motion.
Does that work?
Yeah, our concern is that there's some findings and you did include some, so I'm okay with that.
Some findings, okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
You have to take a second first.
Before the comments, all right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Now we'll take comments on the motion.
Okay. Can the petitioner, now, they can refile and go through all the hoops to refile. By going through as opposed to tabling it and then bringing it back. Now, I see where the petitioner asked to put it back have it discussed. And likewise, they could refile in the same amount of time. It's a little more expensive, granted. But my question is at what point, you get the feel of where we're coming from. Now, whether you agree with it or not is not the issue. But there needs to be some movement or some triggers to maybe next year's election or I don't know what the trigger would be. But that would kind of get this thing moving, because I'd like to see it move. He has his issue, I have my issues. My issue is the field. It needs to be removed. But for sure,
Councilor Hilton, Councilor Hanson, if we keep the side comments to a minimum.
But the point of it is obviously it's not going to go forward tonight, but let's be positive and see what it would take to make it go forward, to see what it would have to take to get it to go forward. That's where I would like this to go, or finish.
Okay.
I got
One other comment.
Sorry.
Okay.
So we asked for the floodplain study. Ensign Engineering came and said, yes, the property is higher than the property surrounding it to the north and to the south. The city engineer said, if the city's willing to accept the risk, or the level of risk or whatever. I mean, it's like what I said the previous meeting when we tabled it. That's what I said, was the property's too high. The property came through and said, yeah. I mean, the engineering study came through and said, yeah, it's too high. I mean, there's got to be something to change, and in order for this to go through, it's like something has to be protected for the people that are around there. Again, with the bad decisions, we're not going to make bad decisions on bad decisions. So,
thank you.
Make a comment?
Sure.
Probably at this point where we have a motion and a second, we probably ought to keep focusing on
Okay.
that and
All
see
right.
what happens,
Sorry,
because
here-
if it doesn't pass,
Yeah.
you go back to where you're at. So.
Okay. So, any other comments from the city council on the motion?
I would just say that I think it should be tabled. I don't know if that comment even matters, but I just.
Okay. It's a comment. You can make comments. So, Councilor Stevens.
I would like to see it tabled rather than denied.
Okay.
But I know we have a motion and a second, but
We do have a motion and a second, so we're going to go ahead and vote on that if that's all the comments. So, Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
No.
yes.
no.
Yes.
No.
All right, that motion fails. So now we're back open. Mr. Park, if you'd like to approach and give a comment, please.
I was just going to ask, so we did go do a flood study, and obviously the comments came back as to what they were. Presented by Mr. Preston. The engineering study did say the ground was higher. The engineer study, or the soil study, is just stating where the property is right now. Does not talk about where we're taking the property to. It just stated as a fact, these are the facts about the property. Then that gives us the opportunity to mitigate the issues that are on the property, and we've presented to you what we are willing to do. And so in comment, in response to that comment, that's what I'd like to say. Second of all, is if you're asking us to lower the property to the original elevation as to where it was, and then you'll allow development,
Not asking that.
that doesn't make sense either. So, I think that we're amenable to removing fill and to bringing things back in. Designing to what the city requires us to do is designed to a 100-year study, and that's what we're willing to do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Park. Do we have another motion, I'm hoping?
Yes, I just don't know how to word it. And if you're,
You don't have to justify it.
do you
Just
want
make-
it tabled? You still see hope? Okay. I'll make the motion.
Mr. Peters would like to make a comment real quick.
Just a
You were too
quick one.
slow, but we'll give you another chance in a second.
We'll come back with bells and whistles. We'll have it for TV, PowerPoint. We'll go through this so you really grasp the engineering side of this, and hopefully that will turn the tide. If not, we'll be
Councilor
done.
Stevens?
It's not going to change my actions, and this is what going to change my opinion.
But
Okay, I'll make the motion.
I think we would agree that tabling is better than denying.
Okay.
You know,
Counselor-
I would go with tabling just because I don't want to penalize you for the costs. And I think it's more effective to table it because it has the same effect. I mean, you can refile your motion to bring it back. It just, there's some costs involved, and I get it. Tabling has the same impact, but it's not going to change my opinion or how I vote. I mean, I'm not going to approve unless I see some action, not just if you do this, will we, you know. Anyway, got it. Okay, go ahead.
All right, Councilor Hanson, it's your turn now.
I'll make the motion that we table item, I don't know what item we're on
Item
anymore.
3.
Still A.
Item 3, the consideration of ordinance number 953, and ask the staff to work with the applicant to address the concerns that have been addressed by the council, and maybe to look into the option of a development agreement to address some of those concerns, along with whatever other actions they are able to put forward. And when you or the applicant are ready to put it back on the agenda, that would be the trigger for us to reconsider.
What exactly?
That was
are
a
those?
long motion.
I don't know. I motion to table it.
Just table.
Motion to table.
You know what
Is
we're
that-
after.
Are you comfortable with that, Councilor Hanson, just motion to table?
Everyone knows what we're looking for, so.
And that was what we were anticipating anyway, so
Okay.
just the table's enough. I think we're
I
good.
think the
I'll
table.
table
Okay, motion to
That's my
table.
motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second for Councilor Merrill. Is there any discussion on this motion, Councilor Arnold?
So tabling takes it to the council. So if you're not here, Annie, if somebody's not here, it can be untabled, denied. Or if I'm not here, it can be untabled and approved.
That's the legislative body's
Sure is.
option. Yeah.
That's why this is just such a great
Are you waiting for
option.
me to be sick or something?
What's that?
If that's
No,
what it
no, I'm
takes,
just saying,
Not a threat.
no, I'm saying that you're saying to hell with all these residents and it,
No, I'm not at all saying that.
now I am mad.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm
Definitely
saying we
not
should
saying
table
that.
it to address everyone's
definitely
concerns.
not.
Saying
Saying
it's
that.
okay for them to flood.
No, we're saying we want
No,
additional
stop it.
information. We want to look into this further so
No,
we
that's
can
not
make
what we're saying.
so we can make a decision we feel comfortable,
One
or
time.
so I can make a decision I feel comfortable with. I would like to have some more information. That's all I'm saying. I'm definitely not saying anything against the residents. I want to be sure that's on the record.
Neither am I. Of course, we're concerned about your flooding. I wish that they never would have built it that way in the first place. I'm really sorry.
All right. Any other discussion? One at a time. All right. Ms. Maragoni, will you poll the council?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Right. The item is now tabled on a vote of 3-2. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Don't take any of this personally, gentlemen. We like you.
We're residents.
All right. We're going to move on to item number 4. Consideration of Resolution 2022-33 to approve the proposed updates to the Moderate Income Housing Plan, element of the Riverdale City General Plan, and new requirements included in the Moderate Income Housing Plan element in compliance with direction from House Bill 462. Mr. Eggett.
Thank you. Let's see if I can do this in a short-winded manner, but still get the information out. Per the state's requirement, House Bill 462 that was approved, they've decided to designate with the Department of Workforce Services a new Department of Housing and Community Development. I put parentheses and statistics because they're going to track and report on housing statistics for the state of Utah. The goal is to create a clearinghouse wherein all the residents and all the communities can check and see what the growth housing will be for the state of Utah in the coming 5 years. They want to see if we're making progress. Now, to that point, I will note in the Legislative Policy Committee meeting we were in last week, They announced there have been 100,000 building permits issued in the last 3 years, which is record for the state of Utah. I thought that was an interesting statistic. So progress is being made. They said we're about a third of the way closer to resolving the housing gap dilemma that the state of Utah has experienced from their perspective. And they is the Gardner Institute of Policy is the one that did the study. So to that point, we've been required and expected to complete an update to our moderate income housing element and have that, updated document ready and available and provided to this Department of Housing by or before October 1st of the year. And then each year thereafter, we have to then provide an updated report that shows how these achievables have been completed and statistical updates and any information we can show that shows progress. So in our report, I've added, again, like I noted in the work session, there's 8 elements that actually we already provide and we're already doing. That was really easy to pick off the list. It was like I think it's A through EE. You probably will see it in the additional document I've attached. There's many options. State of Utah requires that you pick 2 options. And if you as a city do pick 2 options and comply with the reporting per this department, they verify you've completed your reporting, you qualify for your transportation fundings. If you don't do that, then you're actually going to be penalized going forward for not being compliant, and you're going to actually lose monies that are available through the state of Utah and the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. So they're punishing cities who don't do this correctly or don't do it at all. Cities who then do 3 or more options will get even prioritized funding opportunities. So hopefully this is a good thing that will put us in a very good position to prioritize funding opportunities. That being said, it is a general plan update. There was a public hearing element component of that with the Planning Commission on September 13th. During that Planning Commission public hearing, there were no comments raised prior or during the meeting, and at the conclusion of the meeting, they recommended approval of the general plan update as proposed in the packet. You'll see in the packet the ordinance document and then the clean copy. Following that, you'll see the red line copy, or I guess it'd be blue line copy because all the comments are in blue. But that does show all the updates that were had. It was quite a cumbersome, involved process. I feel like, for the most part, the statistics that are in there are meeting the requirements. Just a quick side note, I asked a consultant group we're working with on the general plan update for further statistical information to meet the requirement of the Department of Housing, and he sent me back an email that said they told him just do the best you can, providing statistics as best you can, which was an interesting response basically in the email. So it made me feel a lot better that it's almost like this is what we expect, but do the best you can. And I feel like our product probably is going to be in a pretty high tier, maybe even compared to some of the other cities. That's what I'm hopeful for. Final note, I'll say, and then I'll defer to the council, but I also will have to do an actual report that then connects to this document. So again, this is not a light task, and I'm fearful, based on what we're hearing out of the LPC, that I won't go too deep into this other than to note that there still is conversations about turning the general plan into a legislative tool, no longer a recommendation tool, and making it enforceable and even able to reverse litigate based upon not following your general plan. So it's interesting we just had this conversation, because these kind of conversations are going to become even more real and potentially even more litigious in the future, if that does happen that way at a future legislative update or legislative approval of some kind of a bill. And they may even still then penalize cities and or dictate zoning as a part of that. That might be the first step of that. So just be aware of how serious what we're talking about with this report is, and doing it right is why it's so important to do it right, because there could be implications if other cities don't participate correctly. But with that, not trying to give any scare tactics, but I think it's important to know the information. With that, I would defer to the mayor and the council if you have any other questions for me on this.
All right. Hopefully you had a chance to read that document. And any questions for Mr. Eggett or any comments about it? Councilor Arnold?
Is there somebody else?
I don't know. Does somebody else raise their hand? Man, every time I look down, you guys are, it's like an auctioneer. I just can't look away right now. All right, Councilor Arnold, let's go with you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-33 as stated within the packet.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council? Yes.
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 All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you to Mr. Eggett for that. I've watched him work on this, and I know what a big job, a huge job it's been. And the impression I get is it's one of those jobs that we all have at work that is like, it's not one of the fun things to work on. Like,
That's the
you know,
worst thing, and he gets
it's
no
the worst
credit.
thing. It's a huge, giant
And
document.
we just pass it and move on.
And we just pass it in 2 seconds. He's not, you know, it's not a cool new business. It's not plans. It's not all this exciting stuff. It's the most
tedious.
Banal is the word I
mundane,
like to use.
painful.
Banal.
What?
B-A-N-A-L. Banal.
I'll have to look up the,
Banal, yeah.
I'll have to look up the definition
I
of
don't know
that.
if
but,
I dare. It's from the dictionary or something.
yeah, Counselor Stevens.
This is one of those things what the all-knowing, all-wise state legislature puts on the cities that costs money to, because we have to divert resources to compile the statistics for them for whatever purposes, and then they hold, carrots or threaten. And so when you get a chance to bend the ear of state legislators, this is the kind of stuff that they need to, this next legislative session, you'll see a whole lot of stuff that impacts the cities with these nonsensical, time-consuming, expensive reports that have to be done. So make sure you tell them to knock it off. Anyway, thank you.
And that's exactly what it is. It's, and he's just, it's a nebulous definition of what you're supposed to put in it. Anyway, thank you for all your work.
Yeah, that was really weird. I was really worried about all the requirements, and then to have the consultant say, well, we checked with them, and they said, just do the best you can. I was kind of thinking, what?
Let's count who looks at this.
Yeah.
That'll
What they use it for,
That'll sit there.
or don't use it for.
They just, not to disparage them, but they just want to say, hey, we did this to
they
help
just
with
want
modern
to
income
focus
housing.
It's a
our attention on
feel-good,
it.
do-nothing
feel-good,
report that's very expensive to produce, but say, hey, we're helping our moderate and low income. Anyway.
But thank you, Mr. Eggett, because
I would be a little bit cautious because I don't know that it's do nothing, even though I agree with you, Bart, from that aspect. This is the second one we've had in 6 months. I've never seen these in my 20 years between this and that RDA audit. So somebody is looking at something for some reason. I don't know what's going on, but it's kind of scary, to be honest with you.
But it was very well done, so thank you.
Yeah, excellent
I know
work
it
by
took a lot of resources.
As always, you do an outstanding job, Mr. Eggett.
And he is busy. I mean, you look at every item on here, it's Mr. Eggett, Mr. Eggett, Mr. Eggett. So without any more further waiting, and we're punishing you guys for not being prepared last time, I guess.
Let's
And so
put
we're
'em first on the
we'll keep
next
them here till
Fully acknowledge that it's our fault that we're here.
horrible that you're here tonight. We should have put
you
you
feel
first.
the penalty, though?
I warned them on Friday that if I hadn't heard by noon, that on that Friday they'd be at the end, and that's how it happened. So, but Kim
Silly
knew, right?
you.
In fairness to you, this isn't a surprise, and I worried about that one item taking a long time.
And
Sorry
when
about
they
that.
come back, we'll put them at the end of the agenda, and they'll be punished just the same. So,
You should have brought your jammies.
no, really, I feel horrible for you guys. I really wish.
I would say our engineers, we did leave our protractors with our pocket protectors.
Okay, okay,
We don't use those anymore.
okay. Well,
He's a
I'm glad-
pharmacist. He's
I'm
just
glad
throwing out terms.
I'm glad somebody caught that.
What was his word?
I forgot Jake
Exacerbate.
Tate was out here. I like you, actually. So that engineer comment wasn't directed at you.
We like you guys.
But, oh, shoot, that's too bad. All right. I like Jake Tate, the engineer. So anyway, we'll move on to item number 5. That makes me feel embarrassed. So consideration to untable ordinance 955 to approve the proposed roadway vacation at the Cozy Dell and all the different addresses as stated in the packet. Approximately 4800 South, 4400 South. Do we have a motion to untable?
moved.
So moved and a second. All right.
Really going to tick you off
This is-
when we go through this. baby.
Okay. And any discussion on that motion to untable? Well, we had,
Steve.
I moved.
I second.
he moved, he seconded.
Jeez, pay attention.
It was, they broke the rhythm.
We did break the rhythm.
I'm just trying to
We
get
could have
this
been
moving.
done with this by now. Okay, so poll the council, please, on untabling.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it
There he
stands. Old habits. Okay, it
I am never
stands.
first on your little sheet there, ever.
You'll be first next time.
It stands as untabled. Mr. Eggett, do you want to explain to us where we're at?
Really quick, just as was requested at the September 6th meeting, there was some agreement discussion with the neighboring property owner, Riverdale Commercial Holdings LLC. I've received an email from Riverdale Commercial Holdings LLC as well as from AFCU that both sides have agreed to an agreement. Their terms are good. They're on the same page. That's done. And then also I have an updated commentary from our engineer. He's supportive of the updated plat. We did get updated plats, which I pushed hard to get done. I figured if they're coming back, let's make it right and just have it all crisp and clean. It's crisp and clean. So with that, I would defer to the council if you have any questions for me or for them. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Arnold? I mean, do I have any questions, or we want to hear from them?
Just a minute,
Just
just a
move?
minute. Let me scroll down.
Oh, Bart.
I just want to say thank you for getting it all organized like that, Mike.
Is
We
it signed?
appreciate it.
Is it signed by both parties?
That's what I'm
It's
getting
been
at.
agreed
is-
upon.
I'm sorry I asked.
What,
It's been agreed upon.
Councilor Stevens, you had a question?
would whoever's representing, are you representing who?
Already called to make a motion.
I'm sorry?
Oh, you did?
AFCU is Kim.
Kim, and you're representing,
They're engineers.
and you're representing Mr. Tate?
Okay.
AFCU.
They're all with AFCU.
And no one's representing Riverdale?
I do have a letter from them. I could read on the record if you want me to.
Please.
Okay. Quick email. It's quick. It's short, Councilman. It's real short. It's from the gentleman that was here at the last meeting on the 6th. His name's Alex Knorr. It just says, "Hi, Mike. AFCU and us, Riverdale Commercial Holdings, have reached a final agreement regarding the vacation of the public roads. We expect to have the final documents routed for signature today, but they may not be executed before the meeting this evening. Currently, AFCU is compiling the final docs signature packet, and we're told we should have them this afternoon. From our perspective, we are comfortable with the city moving forward and approving the vacation pending the execution of the final agreement. Please let me know if you have any other questions or concerns."
Okay, thank you, because I figured you were all with AFCU, but I didn't see the other party.
I think that's why they didn't even attend. He figured this email would be sufficient if it came up. So that I brought it in case that was
Thank you.
questioned.
That's where I was going.
Okay, we did actually have Councilor Arnold that wanted to make a motion. Is there any other discussion? Councilor Arnold?
Move to approve ordinance 955 as stated within the packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Yes.
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 Was it worth that? You have one more.
But you learned a lot from the previous discussion.
One down.
didn't you?
Okay, next.
You're not by the river.
Item number 6. Item number 6, consideration to untable ordinance 956 to approve a proposed AFCU corporate campus subdivision property located approximately 4624 south and 4724 south, 1500 west, as stated in the packet. America First, Mr. Eggett. Oh, wait, let's see. First, we have a motion on table.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's untabled.
Did you get that, Ms.
No,
Maragoni?
You have to vote.
No, we got to have a motion and a second. Did you get both those?
Okay.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Kyle Allen
Okay,
first.
Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
She does it randomized.
Yes.
There we go.
Put your wine in now. Yes.
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 All right, it is untabled. Mr. Eggett.
I really don't have a whole lot to say other than following the discussion of the vacation at the last meeting on the 6th, this matter was similarly tabled, and since that time, again, matters have been resolved, land use agreements have been agreed to as noted on the previous item we just discussed in this meeting, and again, the recommendation from the city engineer is that everything is good and that they just provide us with the final plat drawings. And with that, I defer to the council.
Any questions or comments, Councilor Stevens?
Yes, Mr. Tate, would you please come to the microphone and answer my questions?
Hi, Jake Tate, 2010 North Redwood Road, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Would you summarize for me, and others if they care, what were the points that were being ironed out or you needed to come to Greek? Would you just
Yeah,
briefly
so
summarize?
when
That's in a motion that's already been passed. The agreement was for the other one. It wasn't for this
Okay,
particular
okay,
item.
not for the, because.
so specifically related to the subdivision,
Yes,
there was a portion of land that America First was going to be dedicating to RCH as part of the agreement. So that was taken care of on the subdivision plat. It does touch some of the vacation, so I think we can touch a little bit on it. But basically, when the vacation took place, half goes to RCH of the road that is adjacent to their property, and half goes to AFCU. So the subdivision was used to kind of clean up that, where America First would take control of the roads, and RCH gained easements to the roads, but no longer maintained ownership of their half of the road. So there was some negotiation points as far as how the roads were going to be maintained, who was going to maintain them, who was going to pay for them. So a lot of those kinds of details needed to be hammered out, and they're taken care of now.
So you've made an agreement, and okay, because on the proposal it says as requested by America First and AWA Engineering, which is are you AWA? Okay, so and so you've made those agreements, and everybody, and that reflects on the. Because I'm looking at this and I'm not sure what I'm
Again, as noted in the last item, I have emails from both Kim as well as Alex, who again represented Riverdale Commercial Holdings, and both have agreed that they it would have been one thing if only one side had said, yeah, we're good, but him sending that email gives us assurance that both sides are equally good on the agreement. So I think that's what the evidence we need.
Councillor Hanson.
I do have a question related to the subdivision. Now that all those public roads have been vacated, is America First maintaining all the snow plowing throughout the winter?
Yes, and I believe they have been in the past. Yeah.
The campus
Including-
roads.
Other than Cozydale.
Including
Yeah.
Cozydale,
Yeah, so
but they'll
those-
take that over now. Oh,
Because
just
we're
making
rolling
sure.
right into construction, and part of Cozydale's going to go away, and
Awesome.
it'll all be private.
Just
Yeah,
checking.
yeah, if you remember here a couple months ago, a site plan was already approved for the project. So with the subdivision being able to record in the vacation plot, they can move right in. And their building plans have already been reviewed and are ready to go. So this is going to move pretty quick.
Any other questions for Jake Tate?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none. Any other comments? A motion would be in order. What is it whispering down here? This is a public meeting. We need to keep our comments
We are
public.
talking about things other than the issue on the agenda.
Okay, that's interesting. Councillor
Move to
Stevens.
approve ordinance 956 to approve the proposed America First Credit Union Corporate Campus subdivision property located at approximately 4624 South and 4724 South and 1500 West, Riverdale, Utah, as requested by America First Credit Union and AWA Engineering.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Yes.
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 That passes unanimously. Very good. Thank you for your patience tonight. We'll now move on to comments. Any comments from the city council for this meeting? Councillor Hanson.
I just have a question. It sounded like Lori indicated she's not on the planning commission anymore.
Lori Fleming?
I don't think she is
No,
anymore.
she hasn't been for
So
a
that
while.
position's already been
Quite a
filled.
while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
Probably 3-4 years.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes, please. Going back to the print and properties and those folks, can you keep us appraised on a regular basis of what their direction is where they're going to go? Because this is, I see them petitioning to untable it, and we just rehash the same things. And so something's got to move.
No, I agree, and that'll be something good for us to. We're kind of going to be the gatekeepers on this. If it's not ready to come back, we're not going to bring it back. So, it's got to be really positive and something we think you guys would buy off on before we bring it. And I'll keep the mayor
With joy.
apprised of
Buy
everything.
off
So,
with joy.
right.
And bring it back.
Right.
Because for them just to keep repeating, and for us
Yeah.
to keep repeating. Okay.
And I already know that we can get there, but we'll deal with it when the time comes. So.
Yeah, and I would echo that we feel like that's the role with the mayor. We'd communicate to the mayor, and then at his discretion, clearly, information could be communicated thereafter.
Good point.
Okay. Any other comments? Any comments from the city staff?
Yeah, just quickly, I'll fly through these. We have our fall cleanup coming up. It's on the 24th of October. They want you to get your stuff out onto the curb on the 21st through the 23rd. That'll be in the city newsletter coming out. But just so you're aware of that. September 27th, this was a request from CTC. They have a press conference on their new program they're going to announce. They wanted us to invite all of the city council members, and mayor, obviously, he'll be there anyway.
What's CTC?
Communities that care. They're launching a new program. It's about parents see something, but if you want more information, I'll get you more information on it. Otherwise, I wouldn't anticipate many of you would show up for that anyway.
It's
so.
at 10:30 in the morning at the Game
Right.
Dancer, which is the old Birch Creek Mercantile.
Right.
going?
I'm speaking.
You can
I'm the
represent
press.
us.
I'm the press release. So yeah.
And then the last thing, and this is somewhat important, we have our general plan people are kicking off their open houses both at the fire department and
The Halloween Fest.
the Halloween Fest. So they'll have displays set up there and be able to start answering questions. That will also be in the city newsletter this week. There's a little article in there that's talking about people getting them involved and stuff. This is the very first interaction that group is going to have with the public. So watch for those when you see them and maybe go up and say hi and chat with them as you're going.
We'll
by
have a
their
few
booth.
posters. I'm going to hand them out to the departments to maybe put in their buildings as well. It's got a QR code that people can scan to get more information and all that good stuff.
So that's alive and moving quickly. It'll go fast. So we've had a number of meetings on that. So that's all I had, Mayor.
And just another plug for that general plan. I get lots of emails from people that are like, "Hey, why are you doing this? Why are you allowing this? Why are you building this? Why whatever?" And I've been plugging that and saying, "Hey, we're redoing the general plan. So if you have an opinion, make sure you watch for those opportunities to share that opinion." So I know people contact you guys too, and just say, "Hey, yeah, please make your voice heard," Councilor Stevens.
One last thing, I got hit up the other day by people from Roy who are city council people.
Oh, I tried to call them back. I don't know what they're calling for.
Money.
Really, for the
complex
money.
And because they want some money, and so I didn't know if I should warn you or if I told them it's going to be tight. Maybe anyway, now you know. Thank you. That's all.
City staff has a comment.
We give them money every year.
And I told her that we
Might not
support
be what they
that.
want or how much they want, but
By patronage and by buying passes and buying.
city, probably more than any other city. has
How much do we give them?
You know what? You need to talk with, because
I can pull numbers if you need.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
they're doing 1.5 million.
Okay.
Allen Hall.
Allen Hall's doing 0.5.
0.5, and they've got some other corporate that they're hitting up, but they want the surrounding cities whose residents patronize and pay the non-resident rate, unless
Which we do.
which we actually pay resident because we pay them. So
No, we pay non-resident.
We do?
We buy it.
The way the program works is the full non-resident rate that Roy charges, Roy receives. Okay? So our residents come to us, they pay 50% of that rate. We issue a pass. When that pass is redeemed, Roy bills us and collects the remaining 50% of that rate.
Jeez.
So it's not a resident, non-resident rate, nothing like that, okay? We offer our residents a discount. We pay the rate in full, and we collect 50% from our residents. But because we offer that pass, a lot of Riverdale residents, because we offer that program, a lot of Riverdale residents take advantage of it, thus further patronize the Roy complex, right? And that's how we support that. We cut a check to Roy every single month, and it's based on use. Now, the use has gone down because the pool's not functional. And when the pool's not functional, what they offer in the complex is not all that different than what we offer at the community center. The pool is a big distinguishing factor. But our residents pay to us, they don't pay to Roy. We pay 100% of that fee to Roy.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm glad you were here.
but anyway, I was just going to warn you that
Yeah, thank you.
it was that
I tried to call her 3 times today. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anyway.
I don't even know. I mean, is that illegal? Is that legal? Like, can we? I guess we could. I don't know.
Again, it's the same thing. It's a donation outside of the city, so it'd be something we'd have to look at and consider and go through the same process, public hearing, all that kind of stuff. I spoke to the city administrator this morning and thanked him for running those pools so we don't have to. So he didn't appreciate that, but I thought it was kind of a good idea. Told him to keep up the good work. We like it.
Aren't we already doing a donation by paying 50%? Yeah, it's already a donation.
But we're paying the full amount, actually.
No,
so-
we pay the full amount, but we get
City funds pay
50%
half.
back.
Yeah.
So we're already making a donation to another city to use their facilities.
They haven't reached out to us, but I kind of suspected that when the mayor reached out to our mayor that would be coming at some point in time because they were worried. And he told me this morning that thing actually come back quite a bit higher than what they had anticipated. So they're kind of freaking right now.
The very reason that we don't have a pool and the reason that we've created this program is because of the situation that Roy finds himself in right now.
Right.
You know, it's one of those situations that there's not a lot of for-profit, privately owned pools.
And the liability is
You don't
terrible.
make money on pools. posts.
Let's start charging Roy residents to use the splash pad.
Yeah, but that's everything we do. I mean, the police, fire, everybody. I mean, when the police go outside of Riverdale, the fire goes outside of Riverdale, everybody, that's what that is.
But it is what level of service you want to provide and at what cost. And it's been really nice for us to have that partnership with them. And I think it's a good two-way situation because they have revenue that they can plan on from us. Or whether we patronize their aquatic center in the summer or with our complex thing year round. That is guaranteed revenue to Roy City that helps them with their operating costs. But it's a great thing for us because we don't have to shoulder the full financial burden.
Oh, it's a great program. It was beautiful. I mean,
So that's the level of service we've decided to provide, right? I mean, we shell out that money without any revenue coming back.
You know, when I got hit up on that, I brought that up, and it was just like, she didn't even know.
Didn't know.
It was not aware of that agreement.
Okay. All right, very good. I don't have anything else, so a motion be in order to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say yes.
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 All right, we are adjourned for that meeting.
From hell.
Okay.
I think I've eaten by a split second.
You guys want to hear what the engineer said about us out in the hall?
Yeah?
How did you hear
Which
that?
one?
That engineer from Ensign
What did he hear? What did he say?
What did you say?
With the comb over?
said the city council should learn how to do its job.
Wow.
Are we taking a break for a minute?
You want to take a break?
No, not if we're gonna hurry.
Let's
by it.
hurry.
It'll be quick.
Let's hurry.
Okay.
I don't know that it will be quick.
It won't be
gonna be
long.
quick?
Yeah, it'll be pretty quick.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. Well, then let's move into the RDA meeting. Ms. Maragoni, are you ready? Okay. We'd like to welcome everybody to our Riverdale City RDA board meeting for Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. Let the record show that all board members are present as well as members of the city staff. Seeing no members of the public, we will skip the public comment section. There are no presentation reports or consent items. Our only action item is to review of and discussion regarding Riverdale Senior Center programs and forms. Mr. Brooks.
As I mentioned earlier, I set this as an action item. I don't know that we really even need to take action, but in case something came out of this, you had that option available to you. But basically, I just wanted to update you. So we are moving forward on everything with the senior center over there, looking at everything, reviewing all the programs and whatnot. The biggest concern we have, and probably the highest liability issue we have right now, is some of those senior citizens that should not be there. This has gone on for a number of years. We've got individuals, I mean, they're supposed to be completely able to live on their own and to be able to exit the building night or day on their own without, assistance. And we've got a number, at least 3 that I know of, maybe even more, that we're going to have to evict because they couldn't do that, whether it's mentally or physically or whatnot. And it's starting to turn into a rehab center, which again is a violation of our lease because these people are laid up and they can't get out. And if we have a fire there, it's just a nightmare on our part. So that'll be the first step we take, and that'll probably be this week or next week. We'll start evicting people. So just so you know, this is going to be coming down. Those we have no choice on. We've got to move on them. The second thing is the housing issue. And Rich, you can jump in here anytime. We've met with, we've been going over that thing. So all the documents are updated. Those were old. They weren't very good anyway. All those leases, everything we've got has been redone. We're ready to start doing that. We want to start new leases with everybody. Our plan was initially to do month-to-month leases, and we still are leaning that way. One of the things we're seeing is these people get in there, and even within that same year, they may get to the point where they shouldn't be in there anymore. And so by signing that 1-year lease, that's what we had before. It's kind of tying our hands. Now we got to back it up and start over again. So our preference would be the month-to-month, and that's what we were planning on doing. We met with Weber County last week or 2 weeks ago, and Weber County's got a lot of good programs that helps our senior center if we want to incorporate some of that. One of them is a voucher program. That there's different ways that they do it. There's actually 3 different programs. They can do a physical, like a building contract where everybody's under that voucher system, or individuals, and there's a state system as well. There's a lot of COVID money was funded in there. So initially what we had planned on doing is raising our rents. When we told them what our rents were, they almost laughed at us because we're so low, and these guys do it as a business all the time. and they're dealing with these, they were almost shocked that our rent rates were so low. They said, you're not even up to the what were they saying initially, the HUD rates, and they use one above that even, that's a little bit higher than HUD, and we're below all those. So our plan initially is we're going to get up to at least the HUD rates, and we're still planning on doing that, but if we did that immediately, it'd be almost like truth in taxation. It's going to be a huge hit on these people. So our plan was, let's go a little bit for the next 3 years. So, a 10, a 20, a 20, whatever we got to do to get up to that point. So it'd be in pieces. But after hearing about the voucher program, now we got to reevaluate a couple of things there. One is we could probably go up to the higher amount now if we incorporated that voucher system. The only downfall to that, if you go through the county, is we have to have a minimum 1-year lease, which we may have to go back and revisit that and maybe consider that. But how that works is they pay a third of their income, I think, towards the lease, and then the voucher system picks up the rest of it. So even if we had our higher rates now, we would get reimbursed on that at the higher rate rather than waiting. So we're kind of leaning that way. We're at least exploring some of these things. And then this is going to help those people out too, because we figured we'd lose a lot of them when we start raising these rates because they just don't have a lot of money. But this voucher system is going to help them. And the state ones that's available right now, she said they've got ample amounts of money that nobody's taking advantage of. There's no restrictions on that one. They could get those right now and start moving on them. So there's some benefits there, and I think we'll reevaluate, our thought process on that, because if we can get this voucher system implemented and get that money back, and really, you as Riverdale residents are paying for that. That's a county program, so your tax money's going towards that. And I think we should be taking advantage of it rather than just having these people shoulder that whole bill.
Rich, did you have something on that?
Just real quick, Steve. I want to make sure that everybody understands the issue with why we would need to raise the rents. Steve talked about it as the need to raise the rents to get it in line with the HUD or to get in line with the FMR, the fair market rate. But that's not really why we would raise the rents. We have an issue where right now we're losing money every single year on our operation costs over there. It costs more to run the program than what we're collecting in rent. In essence, we're subsidizing it, but we don't have that RDA tax increment anymore, and we're going to run into an issue where we don't have any money over there. We'll be coming to you guys saying, how do you want to solve this problem? But the people that live there probably ought to shoulder the cost of what it takes to operate the senior center. And so that's why we're looking at trying to get the rents up. When we looked at what it would cost to kind of break even, so to speak, we're not running a business, but just to break even, it actually lined up pretty good to what the HUD rate is. So that's kind of why we've targeted those areas. But we're trying to figure out how to be compassionate toward the residents because it's going to be a huge impact on them. That's why we've explored these voucher programs and these other options, right? I mean, we can just raise the rent and say we don't care and walk away, but we do care. So we're looking at that. Now, with the voucher program, it might be a possibility, but there's also strings attached to that. And we've got to make sure it's a good fit for us. And I think we're in the process of doing that. I don't want to speak out of turn, Steve, but that's the thing is like, are we willing to take on all that comes with that? And to my knowledge, we haven't made that decision, but we're looking into that. We had a meeting with them. We're trying to figure out what those strings are and if it's, they want 12-month leases with the people as part of the stipulation with the program. We have concerns that way. There's inspections that come with that could have financial things tied to it that we got to fix. So we got to do this, we got to do that. I mean, they basically can kind of dictate to us a little bit what they want our units to look like. And so we're just trying to look at all the options to do what's best for the seniors over there. But ultimately, we've got a revenue issue.
Board Member Stevens first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Let me just briefly explain a couple things. For 4 years, my wife and I were service missionaries in inner city Ogden. And so I dealt a lot with the housing issues for people low income as well as diminished capacities, both mentally and physically, of people in these Section 8. Now, you showed a little bit of concern about some of these people. There are Section 8 houses, like St. Benedict's Manor has facilities for diminished capacities, people. And it sounds like these vouchers is Section 8 HUD, and now you have to comply. And cleanliness is a big thing in all those Section 8s because they're a little bit older facilities. Bed bugs is a huge problem, on and on and on. But in fact, if I could, because of that experience and some of that corporate knowledge that my wife and I have, we've been asked as an assignment from our ecclesiastical authority to help with those in the Leslie Trailey Park, but that's off topic here. And so, and I get it that those people don't have, they get in their little niche, so to speak, but when you say we've been talking, who at the Weber Human Services are you talking with?
Well, there was a resident who attended our Truth and Taxation, who works for Weber Human Services as an assistant director.
Yeah.
Who came to public comment and made that comment. And so we followed up and we met with her. We met with her as well as the director of Weber Human Services, as well as the
Kevin Eastman.
Eastman, yeah.
As well as the person over
used
senior.
to be a resident.
Over senior aging. And what it comes down to is when we go to these residents and ask for a rent increase, and we recognize that seniors are on fixed incomes and this has a huge impact on them, we want to be able to look at them in the face and be honest with them and let them know that, hey, we've explored as many options as we can, and this is the best option for you, for the city, for whatever. And resources that are available with the county, whether they're available at our facility or whether they're available at other facilities, being able to tie them into resources to help them is also something that we're interested in. I'm not sure on these vouchers if they're right for us. I can't stand before you and make that recommendation at all. I have huge concerns with it.
I would
but
say avoid.
we're having those conversations because I think what we've been asked to do by the mayor and what's been explained to me with Steve, what we've been asked to do is to look at all options. And that's what we're doing. So
For senior housing, yeah, but if you get into where families...
that's all this is senior housing. It's not anything
You look
else.
at Chevy Chase, what used to be called Chevy Chase Apartments, I don't know, Mountain View. That is a subsidized, and you can see the quality. Now, that's for younger families and stuff, and so it's like, I wouldn't take my kids in that place. But for seniors, there's a lot more limitations. I mean, the latitudes are different, but if we can avoid it, we should, but if it's not feasible to the clientele we have.
Well, and ultimately, I don't know that we have a responsibility to the clientele to give them what they need, as far as like if it's not feasible for us to run this thing at being able to break even. I mean, I don't know what we do.
So-
If we're coming in asking for a subsidy every single year from you guys out of the general fund to have Riverdale City residents pay for other residents, I don't think that works. And so I think what we have to do, and the only option we have, is to figure out that break-even point and get there.
Ms. Hanson has a question.
Or just a comment.
Okay.
It was never intended to be subsidized by the city. The whole purpose was that the housing would take care of itself. And so if we haven't kept up with raising rates, that's our issue and we need to correct it, and you're working on that. And as far as I know, it was never in anyone's viewpoint for it to be Section 8 housing, that we would allow that to turn into that. That was never the point, that these weren't people who necessarily needed the subsidies. They're people that should be able to afford to live there. And I know there's been some inflation and some hard things, but it's just I know there's a lot to think about, and you're going to put together some more information. But if that's what the vouchers require, I for sure would have a big issue with that, because that was never the intent of the senior housing.
It wasn't, Annie, but how they explained it to us, most of these people, senior people on those fixed incomes would qualify just because their income's so low. So, I mean, just the mere fact that we're still focusing on seniors, I think we're fine. We're not lowering it. Yeah, it kind of screens itself. And then those who can't afford it, they keep paying because it's still a good deal for them. So I think it's still a win-win. I think we can still watch it, and I'm not concerned about some of those other things. When we ask them, we hit them apart on those inspections and things like that, and they kind of laughed at us just because they're used to seeing some of this inner city kind of stuff, and our apartments aren't
And
even close to
we
that level.
talked to John Flynn as well, who has personal experience working with some of these properties that are Section 8 housing, and
Yeah.
he could shed some insight
Yeah.
As to what that all entails for us. He's in our public works department, and he helps us with maintenance. And he came from Kier Property Management, who operated a lot of those types of properties, and so he would be able to help us understand what the inspection entails.
Yeah.
But you'll provide all that to us, right? So
Right.
that we can review it prior to the meeting,
Right.
really think about what we want
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, we're not going to designate
Okay.
our stuff to
Just so we
that
have
point. So no, I don't think anything's really going to change other than if we can find sources for these people, we would consider it that way. But just to help pay for it and help them so they didn't all have to
Question
move
for
out.
Rich, do we still have a waiting list to get into those apartments? Like a multi-year waiting list?
We do, but it's going to change.
We've created a huge issue with that waiting list. The person who's top on that waiting list has been there for 7 years.
On the list?
Yeah, and what's been the practice has been, if you're at the top of the waiting list, you get to move in. No questions asked. You've waited 7 years, you deserve it.
Do they apply to get on the waiting list?
You just express interest and we put you on. Okay. But there's no equal opportunity involved. It's application by invitation. Those practices are not okay, and they're changing. I have not had a vacancy yet since you guys put me in this position.
Really?
And when we have a vacancy, it's going to be handled completely different than what, we got to balance. These people have been promised a spot for 7 years. Okay. I can't just eliminate the wait list. There'd be a riot. Okay. But we have some issues because the way we've been doing it is they're not independent by the time they get to the top of the wait list. Yeah. It's 7 years later. Their health has changed, their situation has changed, but they've been promised this spot. It's almost like they just deserve the spot. So we're going to have to be screening these applications and background checks and credit checks and make sure that they meet the qualifications to live there. And if they don't, they'll be removed from the waiting list. We have not added in a single person on the waiting list since I took over. We've quit the practice of putting people on the wait list. We just have about 300 names that were left over that I inherited, and we've got to figure out how to handle that.
But, you don't know if half of them are dead.
Well, and that's the other thing that's a real thing. Is prior when we had openings, we would call through and people would have passed
I've
away.
tried to help put people into Section 8 housing, and they say, 6 months to a year, we put in an application, and the application takes a bit of doing, and 2 months later, because they have an opening, and they go down 15 slots, 15, 20 slots.
Well, and when our rent is as low as it is, it invites people to be interested, just by virtue of that. So raising the rent, I think, is going to curb some of that interest. But we do have a waiting list, and we are working to remedy that because I think it's a net negative for us right now.
Okay.
Yeah, some of those forms will clean a lot of that up. So with our application procedures and everything, it's way different. So the last thing, unless Rich needs to throw something else in here, is part of those other meetings as well, we discussed lunches with them down there. Weaver County does provide a lunch through their Meals on Wheels program that you guys all pay for. And that's another option. There's a rotational process to even get into that. We did ask them to put us on that for consideration. Whether we'd go there or not, I don't know. But in talking to Cody, that's something else that we need to look at. I mean, we're figuring by the time you factor in wages and stuff, we're probably spending over $10. Cody's telling me at least $10 a lunch, and we're getting a $3.50.
I'm not sure that's
donation.
completely accurate.
These are numbers that I'm just throwing out. I mean, I agree with you. I don't know if they're
Right.
completely
Let's not
accurate.
throw out inaccurate numbers, though. That $10
Well,
lunch
this is what
represents
Cody's
Miranda,
saying.
Yeah, but that represents Miranda's salary.
Right, and
to
that's
cover
what I
the
said,
cost of her
salaries.
salary, we'd have to charge $10 a lunch and have the same amount of people coming. But there's a lot more than just lunches we run there. And if we switched our lunch program around, we would still be paying Miranda's salary.
Yeah, and we're not looking to get rid
Either
of
way,
people, but
you know,
we do
so-
have cooks over there
so that's
too
a little-
that would eliminate
little
them.
bit
So,
misleading.
there are costs there associated with that. I don't know that we'd go there. I don't think the lunches are going to be as good. And I don't know that we'd even do that, but we did ask to get put in that rotation at least for consideration, and we'll look at that a little closer, see if it's worth the savings or if it's a break even or whatever.
Can we get Meals on Wheels for non-residents?
They provide them county-wide, so you could get
We
'em.
have a lot of non-residents that go to lunch there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard some negative feedback about Meals on Wheels, so I'm not like ready to jump in. It's just one of those things I want you to look at. Like we're looking
Right.
at everything.
And that's all
Well,
we're
and
doing,
we
just
want to
get more
provide
information.
senior. We know that we have to subsidize some programs, and we want to provide for our seniors, I assume. And so,
Right.
so we really want to look at it before we make any big changes.
And I agree, and we didn't commit to them. We just said throw us in there and we'll look at it when it gets closer and evaluate that one further. But just so you know, that's some of the stuff that we've been working on that to try and help clean that up. So it's moving forward. Again, it's slow, but we're getting there. I think we're certainly heading in the right direction, but we've got to get that cleaned out because we're going to get sued. Something's going to happen, and we're going to be in a mess out there. But yeah, we just got to on some of those. So if you start getting complaints, that's why it's happening. Okay, that's all I had.
Comments on? Okay, all right. We will move. I guess we're ready to move to adjournment. Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on that motion? And all in favor say yes.
Yes.
All right, great.
Yes. You throw them away. We're good.